And a square dance with Texas awaits. In the state where everything's bigger, there's a host of drivers searching for the biggest prize to gain some Lone Star State momentum before the All-Star break comes up in just a bit. Live from the virtual Texas Motor Speedway, we welcome you to tonight's coverage on the Cable and Racing Network of race number 6 in the 2026 Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season, as we bring you our coverage throughout the beginning of this season that has been so fun as of right now. Alongside Francisco Bacalao in the broadcast booth here from Fort Worth, Texas, I am Kenneth Bueno. Francisco, it's been all about parity in the first 5. No one has been able to win more than one race in this second Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season, and we visit another mile and a half on this schedule on a back-to-back slate after things changed from North Wilkesboro to Kentucky last week. Now we're at Texas, the Lone Star State, with a bit of fun still up to go before the halfway mark of the regular campaign.
Yeah, happy to be back in the booth this week with you, Kenneth, here from the Lone Star State. We've seen some good racing here at Texas in the past with the newer updates of the next-gen car. We saw an awesome finish to the race last season, and we'll see who's able to get to victory lane here tonight. We saw a number of drivers last time out were very much contentious in the win here at Texas. With no Lawson Peel present, does it make it 6 different drivers to win?
We've seen a lot of drivers already visit Droppin' the Hammah victory lane through the first several races of our 2026 schedule. You got to look at it right now. We visit this Texas Motor Speedway after our second mile and a half of the season at Kentucky. It was a schedule change from the race admins. It was initially North Wilkesboro. They ran a test there, didn't feel like it was going to be suitable to put on a good race, so they switched it over to the Bluegrass State. That race happened last Sunday, and now we're back to another mile and a half, this time at Texas Motor Speedway. Part of that conglomerate of cookie-cutter mile-and-a-half tracks that were born around the late 90s in the NASCAR Cup Series history. But then we go from tonight to Auto Club Speedway, the 2-mile D-shaped oval over on the West Coast. And that's before, of course, we reach to the All-Star race that'll bring up basically the official halfway mark of the regular season before the No Bull 5 recontinues at the Charlotte Motor Speedway in late April. But Francisco, you look at this set of tracks and obviously the schedule change from last week that you had a chance to partake in with the drivers. How meaningful is it to find that momentum through this portion of the season now that the drivers have gotten used to the rhythm of the campaign so far, and now that we're not in a win and you're in system, you have to be pointed your way forward?
Yeah, it's all about building that consistency and getting those runs in and being tested. You're going to get tested in these races at this portion of the season, and it's about how you're able to come back and fight your way through the adversity. It's not about necessarily going out there and winning as many races as you can, though that obviously would be very helpful. Now it's about, if you're not having a good day, if you're having a troublesome afternoon, how are you able to limit the damage that a day like that can do in the points conversation to try and keep yourself afloat in the battle?
Well, so far, it's been a wide host. It's been a party so far of all the drivers that have won so far this season. Brandon Banks, Daytona. Jaden Porter, Las Vegas. Cedric Hunter at Iowa. Steven Stepien winning at Echo Park. And you, Francisco, a bit of a spoiler there. 215 laps led from Kentucky in your first and only start. So far, no one really has been able to dominate the charts in DTH, at least just yet this season. Very different from last time.
Yeah, numerous drivers have gone to victory lane so far this season. Glad I was able to etch my name in the winners column there last week. But there was also numerous other drivers that were in contention for that race, Kenneth. We had Brandon Banks show up to the party in the second half of that one. Charles Van Schaik also had a really strong run and what looked like a promising closing set of laps to possibly close in for that race win. Jaden Porter was in there as well. So there was definitely a different amount of group of guys that could have gone to victory lane. Some repeats, some new winners, but I think I kind of stole the show with that one, to those led all but 10 laps, Kenneth. I think that's a trend, and it's a trend I'm seeing with the other winners as well here. You look at the list of how many laps have been led at the other mile-and-a-half races, and factor in Kentucky as well, you have to lead over 100 laps or half the race. That's kind of looking like a repeating statistic for these intermediate tracks.
It's always been about being that driver up at the front and being the best so far. We saw how Lawson Peel did that across a variety of tracks last season. Now it's distributed among several others in the field that are still vying for that points lead as we move on through halfway of the regular season. And speaking of Brandon Banks, he has been the perennial contender so far this season, a driver who last season made it all the way to the championship 4 and started off the season with a bang, Francisco, at Daytona, but ever since, he hasn't really let off the gas.
Been consistent every single race that we've seen so far this season. Brandon has just always been the epitome of one of those consistent drivers, no matter what vehicle we use, what tracks we're going at. He just knows how to put in those races, put in the effort to get those good results, and it's paying off. Right now, has been the points leader ever since the drop, though it's never been by a big enough margin. Jaden Porter's been there just aggressively trying to be right on his back bumper to chase after that points lead. So we'll see and keep an eye on those two this evening to see if that points lead will shift hands at the end of tonight.
You see the points look for this 2026 season as it stands, and although Brandon Banks was crashing to the start-finish line, everyone was on that final lap, it was still good enough for 7th. The only driver so far pretty much to have top 10s in every single race this season, and that's kind of in the points lead. Jaden Porter not too far behind him, though, 6 points separating the top 2 in the championship. And then we look at the top 12 cut line. That is, of course, where the chase begins and ends in terms of who's in and who's out. Christian McCrelly so far, that first driver outside of the bubble. Him and Charles Stevens absolutely tied up with Kip Easley in the 8 machine. Those 3 machines looking to differentiate themselves, and still a few others in the mix as well, looking to spoil the party and get themselves right into the mix for this Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series Championship. Again, early days in this regular season. A lot still could be determined by the time we reach the end of the campaign and start talking prominently about where the chase is going to lie and which drivers are contenders and which of those will be some of those to fall out very early on in the run for the title. Well, last season at Texas Motor Speedway, this was a playoff race, had very big implications on who would make it over to the championship in the next round. Of course, this is very big, Francisco, when you have a race like this in the playoffs, because of course a win and you're in means you're forward. Steven Stepien proving very early on in that race, winning stage 1, that he was not to be messed around with, but it would easily become a 2-horse race later on.
Yeah, he dominated the early stages of the race, but given how long these races are, the feel, the drive, the handling, all that will change. And Lawson Peel, like usual, first throughout season number 1, was starting the back, but creep his way forward, and this became a intense fight for the top spot in the closing laps of stage number 2 in that event, before eventually some trouble struck for the driver, I believe, of the 9 going in this battle. You see they were racing side by side for long, and he won stage 2, but they eventually made contact, or almost contact, with the aero packing situation. You'll see that soon. Here's the 15 making some contact with the outside wall, and Brad Fulham with nowhere to go. And this would kind of set off a chain of events that would lead us into this moment right here, the peak of last season's race, side by side between Steven Stepien and Warren Kyle Keith. Peel goes with Keith to try and push him clear, and watch this move he makes on the outside as Stepien goes to the bottom. Keith has him covered. They nearly make contact, and look at the run that Peel gets with the clean air, the high side momentum, instantly gets by both of them, never looks back.
Now, just a daring move from Lawson Peel. We saw that a lot from him over the course of the season. There's some trouble there. Ethan Fonseca Moreno, Eric Schaefer getting around at the exit of turn 4. That would bring out a late yellow and a restart inside 2 to go. Lawson Peel will pull away and never look back, capturing the victory in otherwise a dominant season for the 12 machine, and Peel will walk away victorious at the Fort Worth Texas Motor Speedway. Of course, not in season 2 of the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series, so a very different story could be told here tonight. Let's get a look at the starting grid before this race begins. The 6th event of this 2026 season, where Alex Muscarella, brand new colors and a bad fast race car, 29.435, gets Muscarella first on the front row. Warren Kyle Keith, a great qualifying effort. Several chances for him to win this season. So far has not been the cause yet for Warren Kyle Keith to visit victory lane. He'll try to win from the outside of row number 1 on the restart in the initial start. Back in row number 2 is where you'll find Jesse Whittington. His 94 is 3rd. Justin Erb, with a great Q effort, puts his car on the outside in row number 2 for 4th. Sammy Harrell had a chance to win at the Echo Park Speedway a few weeks back. He's inside the top 5. Jason Anderson in position number 6. Steven Stepien, a winner already this season from that Echo Park race. He's on the inside of row 4. Matthew Perusini in the 96 on the outside in 8th position. Kip Easley and James Kunkel 9th and 10th on the starting grid.
11th will go to the 43 of Garrett Walden, looking to continue his rookie run in this series, with Cedric Hunter looking to try and break through and get another win after winning at Iowa a few weeks ago. Charles Stevens in the 84 rolls off 13th, with Ray Rogers looking to try to turn his season around, the number 51 machine in 14th. Stephen Harlow is back after suffering some connection issues that prevented him from showing up to the Kentucky Speedway. There was Charles Van Schaik, who had an excellent runner-up race last time out, but starts in 16th here tonight. Jaden Porter's really struggled with qualifying so far, rolls off 17th deep in the pack, with the birthday boy Richard Swavely celebrating a birthday this evening, rolling off in 18th. Brandon Banks, your point leader, rolls off 19th to Sheldon Hartman 74, rounding out the top 20.
And back in 21st, Daniel Holdcroft, the last to take a Q time. Timothy Stubblefield back in 22nd, and Kevin Roy, the 22 machine, brings in the end of our 23-car field here from Fort Worth, Texas. A look at our SKMcars.com race analysis. 200 laps and a clean slate. 300 miles in this Ride the Hammah 300, 480 kilometers from this Lone Star State mile-and-a-half track that was born in 1996 and was part of the demolition of North Wilkesboro to bring in a track like Texas Motor Speedway, and both of those tracks now living in harmony on the NASCAR Cup Series schedule. Texas underwent a major refurbishment and repave in 2017. Went from just normal 24 degrees of banking in the corners, made the banking transition in 1 and 2 much shallower at about 20 degrees. It's still the same over in 3 and 4, but with a brand new surface, it has created a lot more grip as a result. However, on iRacing, this is one of those venues where you could always count on a bit of some multi-line racing at the end of a long green flag run. 5 different winners to kick off 2026. Will we get a 6th different dub in the season? Muscarella, Keith, green flag from Texas.
You see right there, immediately off the start, a few lines, Stufford getting momentum. There's a bit of a checkup on the bottom. That means that the 24 for Kyle Keith is able to roll back to the outside of Muscarella to try and fight for the top spot. The pole sitter for the last 2 races up here this time once again for the top spot from the 24 machine. Looks like Kip Easley also had a bit of a moment. They're almost going 3 wide, just inside the top 10, but it's Muscarella once again leading lap 1 for the 2nd week in a row.
Stepping out in front, Keith right behind Justin Erb, trying to keep some company honest right behind him. And look at the run here off of turn 2. Justin Erb with a shot from the outside, gets around his teammate on the inside of the racetrack of Warren Kyle Keith, and he wants more, nearly tailing into Muscarella for the lead in 3, and on lap number 2, the fireworks out there for Erb in the Home Depot car.
Yeah, that cleaner is going to matter, so we're going to see the driver out in front protect the top spot no matter what. And you saw right there, Muscarella didn't want to give up the bottom. He forced Erb to take that high side momentum, to use that upper lane, and he's going to try and roll it once again here in turn 2. Gets another excellent run up to the back bumper, is going to get that leader squirrely. Now he's peeking to the inside. They're blocking once again. Now he tries to go up the outside, but this time he's prepared. Doesn't drift up nearly as high as he did on the last lap, trying to keep that momentum up. But you can see 3 and 4 with those bumps, especially outside of the bottom groove, just makes it a lot more difficult for a driver to hold the throttle in like Erb is trying to do.
Erb in his 8th year of iRacing on the sim, and of course many years racing with the likes of the Sunoco Cup Series and all the drivers that make up this Droppin the Hammah Cup Series season for 2026. He's got a big swing from the exit of turn 2, nearly thought about it on the back straightaway, but Muscarella will take up his shape at the front. Sammy Harrell takes away 3rd, and an early drop-off for Warren Kyle Keith. His number 24 car drops all the way to 4th as he's getting chased down by Jesse Whittington. Muscarella, so far the driver up in front, of course, like you said, very comfortable leading laps at the head of the field after some great qualifying efforts, but an average finish of 12.5 in his 2 starts in which he did capture the pole hasn't been exactly reflective of prominent success, regardless of whether he starts up front or not. Finished 5th at Kentucky last week, and now currently in command as Erb is going to try to do everything in his power to get around this 48 car, but now there's a bit of distance, and the elbow room works in favor of the 48.
That was a huge hit to the outside wall to Sammy Harrell on the 42. That might have possibly given him some kind of damage off of turn number 4. That was a huge impact to the 42. We'll see if we can get a replay here on just how hard of a hit it was to the outside wall. Normally we see drivers tag the wall, Kenneth, but it's usually smooth, that you don't really have any kind of trouble finding what goes on. But that was a huge hit. You can actually see the right front of that 42 crinkled up there after he made the hit.
And that's something you don't want to do here at this virtual Texas Motor Speedway. There's the hit. That is a pancake to the side of his number 42 car, Sammy Harrell, a driver who hasn't necessarily been in contention to win plenty of races so far this season in some of his more shallow starts, but this 42 car made some noise at Echo Park Speedway, and one of the few drivers alongside Charles Van Schaik and a few others like Jaden Porter to try and resuscitate the outside lane that lived for a few seconds and then just dissipated many times over the course of the affair. And now his on battle with Warren Kyle Keith for third place in the entry of turn 1. We'll engage these two drivers as they come around to the corner, back in a battle for position inside the top 6, where James Kunkel and Steven Stempien going to work. Stempien, the winner from Echo Park Speedway earlier this season.
You see right there, Stempien just inside the top 10. He was one of those drivers that was dominant in last season's race. The qualifying hasn't quite been there for the 88 so far this season, but he's running solidly inside the top 10. Had a top 5 run going last week at Kentucky before he got himself into some trouble during one of the green flag runs and ultimately did not finish that event. He's looking to try and avenge himself here tonight from a track that he nearly got the checkered flag on last season, trying to build on his mile-and-a-half program. We saw him put up a good run at Las Vegas as well. Got the victory at Echo Park Speedway, even though it's the drafting style racing, unlike what we see here and at Las Vegas, but he's still trying to keep that momentum around as we look a little bit ahead. Battle for 4th now to the inside is James Kunkel on this 42 to Sam Harrell, and it's been a tale of 2 seasons for Kunkel. This time around, it's been a little bit different for that 12 machine, the change of the numbers from the 42 to the 12. Last season, Kenneth, we saw this 12 rocket to the front of fields whenever he got into nearly contact with the 42, who tried to get a little bit of it into the back bumper. Now here comes Jesse Whittington to the bottom. But the 12 machine, Kenneth, you remember, he would rocket to the front of the field on brand new tires, and by 20 laps, he was getting passed by everybody he got around. This time around, he's been a little bit more patient, isn't exactly using everything up on those tires, and it's gotten him some better finishes because of it.
And a small progression from last season. First 5 races of 2025 in Season 1 only saw 1 top 10 for the 12 car, and now for Kunkel in his second edition of DTH Cup Series action, 2 top 10s, a pair of 9th place finishes, first at Daytona, the second at Echo Park Speedway, and we did see this car alongside Sammy Harrell trying to make up work on the outside lane, but Kunkel so smart in positioning himself from the top whenever he had a good run, and then just flailing right back to the inside in the long single file train to gain some track position and gave himself a frank shot to win that race before the chaos ensued, and Stempien held on dominantly in the final 23 laps of that race on the final restart, as Kunkel with a great start here at Texas through 12 laps, passing Jesse Whittington and making his way currently inside this top 5. Plenty of those Ford Mustangs that are all a member of the same exact team. That's the SKM group that is banded together. Plenty of drivers that have worked together in the previous seasons of either Sunoco Cup action or DTH Cup action, a part of this SKM group. And those are 3 SKM cars inside the top 5 early on.
They had some good runs going for them, showed some decent speed last week as well, and they've been able to put in some good victory trips, so we'll see if any of them could be contentious here tonight. As Herb is now falling off, trying to race his teammate on the right-hand side, though, Kenneth. These 3, Brandon Banks, Jaden Portal, Charles Van Schaik, they basically completed half of the top 5 last week at Kentucky. It was poor qualifying efforts from the 82 and the 23, but they methodically drove their way through the field and got there well before the halfway point in the race and kind of stapled their way as part of that fight for the victory. And they're all sitting here right now in 17th, 18th, and 19th. So very early on in this race, they're not exactly where they aim to be.
And a great season, though, for Van Schaik, although this one is starting off a bit slow for the driver of the 23 back in 19th place. 3 straight top 10s, all of which qualifying, 2 of them inside that top 10. 9th and 5th through Kentucky and Echo Park Speedway. 14th is where he started the previous race at Iowa Speedway in race number 3, but rallied to a 6th place finish at the end, even through the debacle of the old tire situation where drivers were literally blowing right front tires, having to come down pit road and make an adjustment. Warren Kyle Keith was one of those drivers to make his early stop on pit road alongside Matthew Perusini, and they still rallied off a top 10 at the end of that Iowa race. We'll see what Van Schaik does. Early days, though, in the first segment here from Texas Motor Speedway. There's that right side look. Jaden Porter is 82, that very bright and colorful light blue and purple Ally Chevrolet, a driver who won one of our last few mile-and-a-half races. Although if you want to count Echo Park as a mile-and-a-half, it is a super speedway, but if you want to count a proper intermediate race, that's where Jaden Porter found victory. A dominant dub over the likes of Steven Stempien and company, and much like Van Schaik, Francisco, a pretty slow start for Porter back in 18th with a points leader right in front of Brandon Banks in 17th.
That's how last week started for those two as well. Van Schaik had an end-of-line penalty, did not attend the driver's meeting, or rather left the session after the driver's meeting, so he had to start from the tail end of the field on that occasion. As Richard Swavely has a bit of a moment, here comes Ray Rogers, jawed about taking it 3 wide with the ailing number 42, who's been dropping back since this damage has been accrued to his right front. Now he's going to be susceptible to a few more vehicles just inside the top 20. But eventually Porter and Van Schaik made their way through the field. They got into the top 5, and that's where they ran for most of the night, posing as threats to possibly come away with the race win. Van Schaik ended up coming up in second. Porter finished 4th when it was all said and done. And now they're trying to slice their way through the traffic. Look at this move by Porter, using that 42 to get advantage of Brandon Banks.
And 3 wide as well. Sammy Harold, a drop through the field from top 5 to now 17th and dropping. That right side damage we mentioned, that huge hit off of turn 4, making already a big impression on what this 42 car can do speed-wise. Inside goes Banks, followed by Van Schaik, so this battle will continue as here comes Porter back to the inside, this time on Ray Rogers in the crack for the top 15 for the first time tonight for this Louisville, Kentucky native. And look how wide everyone is entering turns 1 and 2. This is really becoming a fun battle, Francisco, to watch the way these drivers take on these different lines. How do you attack it now that in this newly looking Texas Motor Speedway, you have to slow a lot more than you would in previous years in the previous configuration? It's a tighter radius, so you've got to make sure you rotate that car nicely.
In a weird way, Kenneth, to me this track drives similar, not the same, but similar to the revamped version of Kentucky, except you flip-flop the corners that have the kind of feel to it. When Kentucky got its reconfiguration in 2016, they made turns 1 and 2 more banked and narrower. You could go faster through that corner, and then you have the narrow and wider turns 3 and 4. And then in Texas, when they did the renovations up less than a year later, they did the opposite. They made 1 and 2, like you're seeing right now, wider and a little bit more flat compared to the faster, narrower 3 and 4. So in a way, you just flip-flop the ends of the racetrack that you're making the slower or faster corners in, but you still have to kind of drive it similarly. The only difference is you get more overall banking here at the Texas Motor Speedway, and 3 and 4 is absolutely bad fast. You're carrying so much momentum through there that you have to take into account that dirty air a lot more than you maybe would at some of those other tracks. And we've seen, at least on the sim, how wide Kentucky can get. You can go up there almost run the fence in 3 and 4, and in 1 and 2 you could probably start off about a lane off the wall. So that goes to show how different it is here on the sim. But Muscarella doing a better job this week of holding on to the lead. He's been leading the first 21, going on 22 laps, holding off attacks from Warren Keith and Justin Erb. Nobody really getting away though.
Made that pivot move in the danger zone, middle 1 and 2. We've seen a lot of drivers dive on the inside for track position through the mid portions of the apex. Right about here, mid corner, was where Warren Keith was making his strike, but Alex Muscarella responds nicely and then just tucks back into the inside lane where he's been comfortable so far in the opening frame of this race. Justin Erb getting tracked down for 3rd by Jesse Whittington, so the SKM train of those 2 Ford Mustangs riding runner-up and 3rd place may have to be broken up in a few laps if Whittington can get around to the inside. And as Muscarella crosses the line, he leads as many laps in this race as he's had the entirety of Season 2. He led 24 laps going into this race total, combined across 4 races or 5 races. And now in race 6, he has already nearly eclipsed that distance and can add some more here in just one event. The most dominant we've seen this 48 car so far tonight.
And he's been putting in some cracks at it. We've seen the qualifying be there for him, so he's capable of being fast. It just hasn't translated for him in race pace. Just struggles to keep the track position. When he does fall back, some mistakes have caught up to him, making contact with other cars or with the outside wall. If he can keep this lead, we've seen with this car that if you can hold on to the track position, that's half the game. The other half he already has, which is being fast and being able to try to keep the track position. If he can keep the track position on this occasion and not use up the best of his tires in the early stages of the run, he has a really good opportunity. Now he would just have to execute on and off pit road, which is what we're going to have to see out of these drivers this evening. We saw last week it played a role in that race, Kenneth. We had fuel strategy determine the end of the race and fuel savings going on. At some point today, we might see drivers having to save a little bit of fuel.
And Muscarella will have to be in that position, leading the most laps. He's out in front. He's not in the draft, so therefore he can't really use or waste or save that much fuel, rather. He's wasting the most fuel out of anyone in the field. The best career finish of Ford did it 3 times in his Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series career. All of them happening last season. His most recent, a 2nd place start, turning into a 4th place finish at the virtual Bristol Motor Speedway in the middle of the postseason. Probably the best opportunity we saw Muscarella have last season to achieving Droppin the Hammah victory lane, trying to change the script here in 2026. There's a battle inside the top 10. That is the Taco Bell Chevrolet. Made those colors very famous in the opening season. Jason Anderson in his 92 car. Now those trying to get around. James Kunkel in that bright blue progressive Ford Mustang. There's Perusini and Stephen Harlow. Those cars back-to-back, 7th and 8th and 9th place on the racetrack. Kip Easley and Garrett Walden not too far behind. And you look at some of these rookie drivers that have already made the name for themselves. You get a Charlie Byer Photography onboard look with Garrett Walden here inside the top 11. And we've seen plenty of promising runs from these drivers. I mean, I look back to Garrett Walden and his run at the Echo Park Speedway, a chance to win that race, settled in for second for a long run before ultimately getting sideways off of turn 4 and basically being taken out of contention before ending up in another crash down the back straightaway. And even with the likes of Anderson in his second season, but still a young driver, and Perosini in his first season, like Garrett Walden is, plenty of promise between some of these drivers, top 10 runs, and very consistent efforts that have gotten them into a point where they could charge for the chase in this Droppin the Hammah Cup Series this year.
They've definitely showed some speed on some of these racetracks, Kenneth, which is very promising. They're just going to have to learn how to race the people that have been here already. That's usually half the battles. Jason Anderson, look how hard he tags the outside wall. Very similar to what we saw out of the 42 of Sammy Harrell. He starts dropping back big time. He might also have some suspension damage on that 92. You see him kind of drift up mid-corner as well. Yes, he has some big damage now on that 92.
So Anderson will have to nurse his race car to possibly the end of this first run. Here comes Hunter to the inside of Charles Stevens as Anderson bleeds a couple more spots in the middle of this top 15 group that is now starting to dwindle out just a little bit. There's the change for the race lead. Warren Kyle Keith finally breaking free of the Alex Muscarella defensive wall that he's put on all race long so far. So Muscarella leads a good majority of this first run. Warren Kyle Keith takes center stage. And now Jesse Whittington taking a shot from the high side on Justin Erb. That's a clear-cut position for third place.
He's moving. He was able to put on some good moves over at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway to try and battle for that win. Ended up in a different strategy. It didn't quite just work out for him, but he showed speed, and that's exactly what he's showing here tonight as well.
As the onboard look from Whittington, playing his eyes very simply on those drivers in front of him and making a look in front. He looks for Alex Muscarella, who appears to be bleeding just a bit on track position and maybe on tire wear as well, as we end up on the longest end of this run so far. Clean and green through the first 32. It's been a lot of fun to watch so far here from Texas. There's a look at Jason Anderson running to 3 and 4. And again, same happenings with Sammy Harrell, running up just a little bit wide in 4, pancaking the outside wall. That is a hard hit. And you think, well, maybe car doesn't look too damaged. Maybe it can still patrol on. But Francisco, with this car as aerodynamic as it is in its natural shape, some would argue probably not just the fact that this is the most aerodynamic stock car in NASCAR Cup Series history, that is not going to take a little bit of time to buff out. May take a longer while to do so. And in the middle of this long green flag run, it is going to bleed you a lot of time when these laps continue to tick through.
Yeah, these cars are extremely sensitive. They might be built like tanks, as Keelan has referred to them, as far as the body's concerned, but the suspension is probably as fragile as ever, so you have to make sure you take care of it. Here we see the fight for the lead. This is where the move originated. You see the 48 got loose, a little bit of aero packing probably going on. Keith gets to the outside, going into turn 1. That's the lane we saw that Erb tried to use against this 48. Look how high on the racetrack he goes too. Not clear, has to kind of wiggle the car out. Huge run for Warren Cal Keith, and this happened at the exact same time as that turn 4 contact for the 92, and that puts Warren Cal Keith out for the first time this evening. And Muscarella now has to try to hold back the 94 as best as he can, but he's been charging, running approximately similar lap times as your race leader, as Muscarella now about 2 or so tenths of a second off.
And so far, the only driver in the middle of this top 10 that has set faster lap times than the race leader. You got to go all the way back to Matthew Perusini, set a 30.5, and so did Stephen Harlow the last time by in position number 6. So this could take a little while, and of course, it will be a few laps potentially before the drivers ultimately end up on pit road, but fast lap times out of the rest of this top 10, that indicates they've been saving these tires the entire run. It is a pretty hot track temperature tonight from Texas Motor Speedway, only 97, probably a little less than what you would expect from the Lone Star State, especially in the middle of this time in sim. Usually creep it over 100 degrees Fahrenheit plus some, but 97, not entirely shabby either for these tires to wear down and it to be rather slick on the racetrack, especially out in 3 and 4, Francisco, where you've got to be nearly full throttle on fresh tires now that these tires have gone through a full heat cycle, and now it's 37 laps deep. That area in 3 and 4 isn't necessarily as gripped up as it felt on the opening lap.
The tires definitely go through their fair share of heat cycles and variants, and we're seeing that here. Numerous drivers have worked their way up. You see Warren Keith actually made a mistake somewhere in the lap. He actually got caught by the 4890. Now he's getting passed again.
Here comes Muscarella, dive to the inside in 3, and after the hiccup from the 24, the Chevrolet fights back on the bottom but loses grip in the center of 3 and 4. Here comes Keith back to the outside and retakes the race lead off 4.
Yeah, not sure exactly what happened there, if it was just a bit of a miscue he had, because he had gotten out to a decent-sized lead, and look how far up he gets there in 1 and 2. We would never see anybody halfway up the racetrack, let alone that high, in turns 1 and 2 and the real life side of things. On an iRacing, there's just grip up there. Kenneth, you can run up there and make it work. I wish this is exactly how the Cup races in Texas would actually go. Hopefully in a few weeks we see something not too far off, as looks like the 94 has to check up a little bit off of turn 4 for that 48 machine. Now Steven Stempian looking to join the fight here and possibly battle for a podium spot. We're seeing everybody up in the front running in different lanes. This is what Texas was always about.
And if there is anyone that can save their tires and run a very disciplined race, well, it's going to be this driver right here in Steven Stempian, already cracking into victory lane this season from the Super Speedway at Echo Park Speedway. Told me in those final 23 laps before the final restart that he wasn't confident. He wanted to be up in the front. Muscarella slaps the outside wall. Those are teammates for the Droppin the Hammah racing team, so Stempian just trades places in the middle of the front straightaway back to 1 and 2. Will take over third. But this is a driver that has spent a lot of time trying to get used to this brand new car. The aero updates are still taking even some of the veterans out by storm, and Stempian has been sim racing since the early 2000s, since the NASCAR 2003 days, maybe even a bit earlier than that. This driver has seen plentiful of different changes across technology and iRacing updates for these Cup Series cars through different generations. He's finally getting the hang of things here at the mile and a half. So Las Vegas showed us that he could very well continue to make himself known at the front, then want to Echo Park, and so far a solid outing here on this long run of the first run.
And Kenneth, what's always been fun to watch as a progression standpoint from NASCAR video games has been the updates with the cars, the tracks, the appearance, the handling, the feel, everything. What was the last thing that they needed to do? Add the aero, everything true about the aero, and the last piece of the puzzle was that dirty air effect at some of these other racetracks that isn't super speedways. They had the draft, you can race in a pack, but that effect of sitting behind another driver in these corners, that effect we've really seen come to fruition on iRacing over the last few updates with different vehicles. The trucks, now the O'Reilly Auto Parts Series cars have them a little bit as well. Nothing like these Cup machines, and that obviously will make some people upset because you don't want to have to deal with the dirty air, but it is realistic, so it entitles the car to what it actually does, even if it's not something that we're a fan of, which you can see that on the Sundays when we watch races like today. And the NASCAR Cup Series fans still not exactly delighted with the kind of dirty air this car produces. And look at that save once again by Muscarella. Those rear tires on that 48 must be screaming.
Oh, he was howling at the exit of turn 2, running behind Stempian, who's now starting to form up a proper shape-up on Jesse Whittington there for second. Watch this. High lane 1 and 2. Carries over to the scene. This car is sideways from the go. And what a save by Muscarella. Bleeds that spot to Stephen Harlow. Moves over into 4th place, but still Muscarella hanging on for dear life. Him and Justin Erb have now just hemorrhaged the track position up in the top 3 at the early portions of the run, and now they're falling through the cracks in 5th and 6th place. Well, there's Stephen Harlow. We just briefly mentioned him and the connection issues he had to face at the Kentucky Speedway last week. didn't really help him in his chance to just run up there on the racetrack for the win, or even just run in for a good solid track position finish. But the driver who spends a lot of his time off of iRacing as a strength and conditioning coach has a lot of stamina here at the end of this first run. 46 laps deep, and Harlow is setting some of the best times amongst this top 5. Leveled out with the field right in front of him just a few laps ago as he was getting around Alex Muscarella, but Francisco Stephen Harlow, although he did miss some of the action last week in the Bluegrass State, he is back in form and hoping to shape up a move in this battle for the top 3.
Strength and conditioning, you say, huh?
Yep.
Wow,
I mean, I'm opposite.
It doesn't surprise. Yeah, it doesn't surprise me when you watch how he races and how he lasts in these runs that get so long. He's usually up there towards the end to save his stuff. You need to have strength. You need to be in a conditioned state to be able to put these reps together. I know that that's probably what he preaches in his classes, if I had to guess, and he's trying to put that to very much use in a different aspect of it all on the sim here. Running in P4 right now, putting in some decent lap times as the top 3 slowly but surely starts bunching up as well. A little bit further back, some moves being made. 7th place Cedric Hunter, and the caution flag is going to wave for the first time this evening. It is trouble for the birthday man, Richard Swabley.
Oh, celebrating his birthday tonight from Texas, and doesn't want to blow out the candles this way with a spin off of turn number 4. That's him on the front straightaway. Luckily, no damage to his Ford Mustang Dark Horse. But one of those SKM Ford Mustangs, we saw 3 of them in the middle of the top 5. In the early portions of that run, Swabley was just trying to gather himself through traffic, and unfortunately the first bit of trouble picks up at lap 48. And that's probably a good sign for drivers like Alex Muscarella and Justin Erb. They were waiting for a yellow like this. Let's get a look at that replay right behind Brandon Banks and Charles Van Schaik. So this is around the top 15. And there's already trouble from Perusini. Wiggles loose there in 3. Swabley reacts with a wiggle of his own. Pancakes the wall and comes around back to the kink in this front stretch quad oval. And that is not an easy reaction to make, Francisco. When you're running at such high speeds, these cars can unravel out of control very quickly. And the second look will just show his reaction to get out of harm's way from Charles Van Schaik.
Yeah, you see it right there. As soon as he made that contact with the wall, it definitely broke some of the steering with that car and just was unable to hang on to it as best as he could. Matthew Perusini made a trip down pit lane just as the yellow flag was coming out. He lost a lap and all that. So did James Kunkel. And I'm not sure where it happened, but the 51 of Ray Rogers at one point also made a trip down pit road about 12 laps ago, was in the stall for nearly 3 minutes, lost 5 laps as a result of it. So trouble early for numerous drivers, but I will say for most of the field, they're probably glad that this yellow came out in the sense of now they don't have to think about green flag pit stops, at least for the time being. They could try to get these yellow flag pit stops in and hopefully no big mistakes, because if you make a mistake here, instead of losing time and maybe 1 position, you probably could lose multiple positions.
Yeah, it's going to be big. Of course, no call for 2 tires, presumably on this stop, so it'll be 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles. I mean, these drivers were hanging it out sideways here in this Ride the Hammah 300 in the early portions of the race. So in this first 4th of tonight's coverage from Fort Worth, Texas, everyone taking 4 fresh tires and some fuel as well. Just also want to make a note that Sammy Harrell went 7 laps deep. We saw his hard hit to the outside wall after a great qualifying effort put him in the top 10. Sammy Harrell also DNF'd from this race. He is now the second alongside Ray Rogers now to be out and in the garage here at Fort Worth. So an early miscue for Sammy Harrell is going to send him out of contention. For Ray Rogers, that trouble early on is going to set him back for the rest of tonight's race. So Keith wins the event off of pit road. Stempien back in second. Whittington, Harlow, and Muscarella the rest of this top 5. And what a start for Warren Kyle Keith it has been. And he's someone, Francisco, that in his attitude never gives up, never shows mercy, and usually is never afraid to take the high line. Literally, it's his way or the highway sometimes, and his way is the highway half of the times at these mile-and-a-halfs. Homestead is just one of those tracks where you can see him ripping the boards 10 times out of 10. Las Vegas was also using that to early race speed, and looking in his favor right now at Texas Motor Speedway, getting around one of his good friends in Alex Muscarella, and using some of that raw pace to skip his way through and using the outside when he needs to. Now he'll be in command for the first restart of the race.
That's kind of his trademark, really, if you will. If that's the thing that you associate with Warren Kyle Keith, it's going to be running the outside the way he does. He's not afraid to do it. Doesn't matter the track, the configuration, the size, what it does to your tires. He makes it work, and he tries his very best to do so, and he's putting that to use here once again from the Texas Motor Speedway. You see where he's running right now? Yeah, we saw him run higher than this here in 1 and 2. Just completely wild to think, and if we don't see this in real life, certainly not yet. Maybe the track surface still has to age a little bit more to see cars maybe get up to where he was there into the pace laps, but it's certainly been moving higher and higher. And here on the sim, well, it's no different in this instance. It continues to move up that lane more, and maybe he's trying to wear it in, get that rubber laid down. We saw iRacing, as far as one of those build updates, was changing the way the rubber gets laid down, how it gets picked up by the track. That could be one of the things he's trying to work in, is make sure the rubber stays off that area of the racetrack in case he wants to use it. Though you see a little bit of rubber kind of split up there as the field was going by.
And what that update means for iRacers and for Warren Kyle Keith is that you don't want to spend too much time on the bottom building up rubber. You want to explore. And that's what Warren Kyle Keith has been doing all of his Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series career. Tantalizingly close a couple of times. His gutsy approach to racing has gotten him close to a Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series win before. He's still looking for his first tonight, and it is a wonderful restart. Getaway lap 52 to turn 1.
Great restart for everybody on that outside. Stephen Harlow is going to clear for second. Almost tries to. He will, as they're almost 3 wide. For that would be the 4th spot. That's Muscarella in the middle trying to hang on. He's going to get a little bit of sideways. Cedric Hunter in the fray battling against Jaden Porter, who's cracked into the top 10.
And now Stepien.
Now to the bottom, 3 wide.
Stepien pointing the bottom. They're 3 wide in the middle of 3 and 4. Justin Erb squeaks on through as Jaden Porter and Cedric Hunter do battle inside the top 10. First time we see both of those cars in this top 10 running group tonight. Here comes Erb back through the high side, the exact same way he tried to challenge from second to the race leader in the first few laps. He's doing it again, this time for 3rd.
As the momentum, he'll go up there and try to fight for that 3rd place spot, and he's got it, and the yellow flag is going to wave once again. Daniel Holdcroft in trouble on the backstretch.
Trouble facing inside. And the AI Chief number 4, Daniel Holdcroft, in peril, no damage to his car like we saw with Swavely. And our second caution rises in quick order through 54 laps. And as the field was just getting aligned in the middle of 1 and 2, Daniel Holdcroft in the battle for position behind. Him and Brandon Banks in a single line. Timothy Stubblefield and Francisco. We mentioned aero packing. That may have been the case for the 4-car. Quick spill off of the second corner.
Yeah, the note with the setup on these cars is that in turn 2, for some reason, early laps of the run, it is just very, very, very loose on its own. Doesn't matter what the track temp is. In fact, if it's colder, it'll probably be more likely to spin other than not. But having a car behind you like that, it is not going to help. You see how far it drifted down the racetrack before he eventually caught it and spun it back the other way, kept it off the wall. And luckily for him, he doesn't have any physical damage to his race car. But that will put us behind the iRacing official pace car. And what a restart that was. It got pretty crazy in certain parts of the field. Jaden Porter tried to take it 3 wide on Muscarella and Whittington, but I guess he caught some of that dirty air in the midst of diving, and he lost so much ground that the 70 or the 55 or the 45 was to get right back by him for that spot and move back into the top 10. And oh, actually, he's on pit road now. Is Cedric Hunter?
Looking for a pit stop here, possibly unscheduled or scheduled here at 54 laps. In the books. We saw him, of course, come with the rest of the field in this first caution period. So we'll see what Cedric Hunter does here. We did see him come unscheduled down pit road at Echo Park Speedway, and that was because he just wasn't able to finish the rest of the race. So he just came in and decided to call it quits. This time, it's a scheduled pit stop for a splash of fuel. So giving up the track position in the first 4th of this race and thinking potentially if another long green flag run comes up, this 45 car could be back in position for the win. Well, let's get a quick word with the driver running inside the top 3. That is Stephen Harlow. Just quick progression through the first several laps of this race. In the first run, we're joined by Stephen now. And Stephen, we've seen the way this track has developed over the first run. Lots of slipping and sliding. What have you felt behind the wheel so far?
Just been doing my best to take care of the tires. Everybody else seems to be focused on running hard and racing each other. And you just be there and pick up pieces when they start making mistakes on old tires.
So it's your first start in the series since the Echo Park Speedway. We noted some of the connection problems you had trying to join the Kentucky server, and you look at this Texas Motor Speedway, again, a very different 1.5 miles than Kentucky, and even a bit like Las Vegas as well. what do you take from the practice laps you've run here at Texas and what the key is to run fast laps? We saw some of those, especially at the end of that first run from you.
Seems to be just rolling the center of the corners right now. The more you're off the throttle, the less you're using the tires, and the better they can hang on.
All right, Steven. Well, we appreciate the time. Best of luck here on the restart. Good to talk to you.
Thank you very much.
That's Stephen Harlow running now on the inside of row number 1. That decision from Warren Kyle Keith chooses the high side, just like he did on the last restart. Worked out in his favor. And not only does he have an opposite driver right behind him, he's got his teammate on the inside of row number 2. So a potentiality for those two drivers to work together as they come off of turn 2. Just got word as well, several other drivers have come down pit road, and some of them are the same ensemble that went down the first time for a quick splash. Charles Van Schaik and Cedric Hunter decide it's not quite over for them to give another splash of fuel, so they are thinking that this race potentially will go down to strategy under a long green flag run. Of course, it took us a while to get our first yellow, with Richard Swavely going sideways at the exit of turn 4, but even then, possibly a savable accident that could have kept us green for much longer and would have forced these drivers onto the green flag pit stops much sooner than we anticipated. But of course, these first 2 yellows, quick flurry in the second, gives us another restart with Warren Kyle Keith back in control. Harlow on the inside in second. Justin Erba, SKM teammate of Warren Kyle Keith on the inside of row 2. And the DTH teammate of Stephen Harlow in Steven Stepien on the outside in fourth. Through the Echo Park Automotive Restart Zone, once again, it's a swimmingly good restart for Warren Kyle Keith and the DTH teammates behind of Stepien and Harlow doing the battle for second into turn 1.
Yeah, the leader's just able to catch everybody else off guard by so much as Herb drifts up the racetrack, nearly makes contact with Muscarella, has to check up a bit. Oh, and they're making contact off of 2. Here comes Jaden Porter with a huge run.
And the first time we're seeing Jaden Porter get a crack at a run inside the top 5 all night long. Quick progression through the first 2 yellows. He's to the inside of Justin Erb, and no dice. They'll stay single file as they roll off of turn 4. Kip easily holding on to defense in the battle for 7th place on back. Here comes Erb, cross back to the inside. He gets Muscarella loose. Muscarella hard into the outside wall. Carries Jason Anderson with him, and the third caution comes out in quick succession, and this time with a torn-up race car involved.
I saw that coming, Kenneth. The way he drove into the corner, he was already loose and driving up the racetrack, and that was a terrible but perfect example of the aero packing situation. We'll get another look at it, but you saw it pretty good there. The run that Herb gets off the corner forces the 48 to have to make a decision on how he wants to defend. Right here, a little bit of contact, maybe gets him sideways, but then right here, that's an aero pack right there, 100%.
And there is nothing you can do in the middle of that line, Francisco. When you've got a car right behind you, this car steps out. And again, we saw the several saves from those drivers in the top 5. Here's the look from Muscarella. Car is going to be savable until a certain point. There's contact in 1. And just take a listen. Ouch.
Yeah, not a fun impact, and I bet that Timothy Stubblefield also had a bit of a moment watching that one. That fell right onto his lap.
And that is very much a hard hit to the outside wall. Here's a look from Stubblefield. Just watching this 48 car sail up the racetrack. Almost nowhere to go.
Jason Anderson also
that's a
slammed
close
the
call.
wall there.
Yeah, and Jason Anderson, we saw him run up the hill. Got into the outside wall. That was just an all-time mess there in turn 2.
Yeah, I wonder what happened now to the 92, because we hadn't seen what happened to him. So let's see if we can find a similar angle to what we had. So we have it here now. There's Stubblefield in front. There's the spinning car. He tries to go to the inside. Oh, he gets loose. He got loose trying to avoid it.
And there was a car on the inside as well. I believe Anderson got loose, and then half of that was trying to get around the car that was on the bottom, just swerving out of his way to not get into him. And Jason Anderson with a hit to the outside wall. Not entirely going to end his race, but one that will be a big-time shunt. He'll have to come down pit road for that. And who's going to join him on pit road? Cedric Hunter, Charles Van Schaik, and almost everyone else that came off to top in. And there's Anderson on pit road. Heavy right front damage is going to send him for a bit of a whirl. And the entry of pit road, man, that was unbelievable to watch that from Alex Muscarella. That's surely going to be his worst finish of the season. His worst so far has been 20th. Did it twice in the first 2 races at Daytona and at Las Vegas. And by the way, Las Vegas was a race in which he did lead laps, and the same thing happened to him in 1 and 2. Got aero pack, car stepped out, and then ended up in a kind of severe situation. Not severe tonight from Texas, but still one that took him out of contention for the win. So it is a hard knock life for Alex Muscarella, now the 3rd DNF driver here tonight from Texas.
Yeah, it's not been easy for Muscarella and other drivers really that have been impacted by these aero packing situations. We saw when it first was introduced into the sim back in June. We saw just about everybody get caught out in the first handful of races and even the first handful of months. And drivers slowly got used to it. It would still happen because there's just so much about it you can't predict or expect. But drivers got better at kind of feeling it out and were kind of able to fight it off a little bit. But they also tried to take measures as far as how, when the driver's X amount of distance behind, you don't want to run in front of them, so they'll just run a different line to avoid that. And then here tonight already, we've seen it happen a bit more. Though, to its credit, Texas Motor Speedway, I think, is one of those tracks that kind of lends itself more to that kind of nature. And Jason Anderson, once again, just slammed the wall in turn 3, did not get the car fully repaired, and he just slammed the wall in turn 3.
He was coming back. Is that Francisco? He was catching up back to the field.
Yeah, this is live right here, and now the car's even more damaged.
Oh, man. Looks like a Taco Bell bathroom at about 2 a.m. Jason Anderson in a big-time mess off turn 4, and now going to be sent down to pit road. Warren, Kyle Keith, and Steven Stepien on the left side of your screen. They're going to come around for the restart, and Jason Anderson, with all of that time spent on pit road, had to get back into full song for at least a moment just to get to the back of the line. And now Anderson's race may just be even soured fully, as he's going to go multiple laps down. Keith, Stepien, and the entire field are going to roll around off turn 4 with a chance to keep this race going at lap 62 of 200. Just about 40 laps from the halfway mark here from Texas. Keith gets away to a good start. Stepien follows him on the inside. Spinning the tires from Keith. Here comes Stepien for the race lead in turn 1.
He had a good reaction of when he wanted to go, but he kind of spun it a bit trying to get it into 3rd gear, maybe missed the shift as well. Now he gets tight up the racetrack, and Steven Stepien gets well out in front as they start stacking up, and nearly making contact trying to defend from Jaden Porter, who's gotten up to 5th.
Take a swing, make a block. Warren Kyle Keith sending it all that he's got with his teammate Justin Erb now flailing from the top shelf on Harlow. And Harlow will give up the spot, run back in 3rd, and now back to 4th. 3rd is Erb. Here comes Keith running through 2nd, and Steven Stepien just got a golden gift on a platter. Matched the restart with a 24, and now he's the new race leader.
What a restart for the driver, the 88, to get out in front. Which is where we saw him spend most of the last season's race here. And now we'll see what he gets to do now that he has the clean air to his advantage. Warren is now going to have to try and hold off Erb. That's teammates right there in 2nd and 3rd together. And Stephen Harlow has a bit of a mirror full of Jaden Porter, who's finally worked his way up through the field. Jesse Whittington and Kip Easley not too far off as well. So this could quickly become a multi-car attack for that 4th place spot.
And it's one of the deepest starts we've seen Porter have all season long. Of course, that Las Vegas race worked up to the race lead and dominated the back half into his first Droppin the Hammah Cup Series win of season 2. Had a previous one at Dover where, in the same vein, all domination at the front, not giving an inch to the competition behind. Tonight, he's had to rally from the back of the field on a qualifying effort that was good enough for 17th and put Porter back in the pack. Him and points leader Brandon Banks are just trying to regain momentum in the first half of tonight's affair. And so far, Porter is winning that one-on-one duel. Remember, we mentioned the points going into tonight's race. Francisco, 6 points between the top running 2. Porter has the edge right now.
That would have to make the difference for him to take the lead at 7 points. I think Banks may have the tiebreaker on Porter. And Banks in the process just got past the 84 of Charles Stevens. That is for the 10th place position. So Banks getting back into the top 10. Meanwhile, here's Warren Kyle Keith now making the charge back towards Steven Stepien in his true form of using that outer groove, that outside lane. And it might just work out for him in 3 and 4 as he'll sail past the 88 to retake that top spot.
And would you be surprised in the way he did it, Francisco? Using the high side lane. I don't know. Just a guess.
You could probably throw your hand on it, make a nice bet, and it's probably going to be the favorite for how he makes a move.
Well, you watch him run that middle line, and his teammate Justin Erb is doing the same. But you watch a two approach look to this in the way Keith does it versus the way Justin Erb is doing it. Justin Erb seems to be committing full time to this high line, while Warren Kyle Keith is using it in spurts. He uses it when he needs to gain momentum off of the corners. There comes Erb to the outside, by the way, in the battle for second, Doring down the quad oval in the look for turn one, and a second tap there from Erb. Not happy there with Steven Stempy, and those two fighting aggressively in one. But Keith now back to the bottom, the bread and butter that has worked for long-run success. But Keith using it just in spurts, Justin Erb using it to get around his second, and the SKM cars rally their way to the top two.
A little bit of a tap of the apron there for Erb. It's going to cause him a little bit of momentum. But again, the bottom line with this version of the tire model that iRacing has, no matter what they do to the updates, is the bottom of the racetrack is the tire saving line. For everything they can do to the multi-groove racing, the aero disadvantages you get sitting behind someone, you need to save the tire, and at every racetrack that's on the bottom, so you don't want to run up there unnecessarily. Now that Keith has the lead and he has a good advantage, there's no reason for him to run up there unless he's challenged.
And there's Justin Erb running in second, so staying in line with his SKM teammates that cross the line for lap 70. And Erb only 2 top 10s this season with one less start than most of the field that are in the top 12 in the chase standings. He missed out on the Iowa race in race number 3. His first top 10, 7th at Daytona, then a 9th in the last race at Kentucky, and that's a whirlwind of a move. Justin Erb to the outside for the race lead. New race leader from Texas.
Yeah, he let him go, Kenneth. I was on board with the 24 there down the back straightaway, and he let off the throttle, moved down low, and let Justin Erb take the lead. So a little bit of teamwork going on here.
Potentially there, but I don't know whether Keith made a mistake there off of turn 2 or not. It almost looked like he wiggled sideways, but Justin Erb indeed gets on by. Keith says, hey, you'll lead some laps, stay out in front, and I'll handle the rest of the competition behind me. We know Keith is a tough defender on the racetrack. Not going to be one easy car to pass, and the St. Augustine Floridian now has to deal with Steven Stepien. A few car lengths back, and everyone in the top 5, Stephen Harlow and Jaden Porter, just continue to run well in single file. They're on the right side, the look from Keith, so he sees Erb in his rearview mirror. He can see the run already. And is that just a patented? Yep, just let you by.
Yeah, right there, let's go. Yeah, you saw the RPMs, the lights trickle down. That was a key sign of him just lifting down the back straightaway, letting his teammate go.
That's a courtesy by Warren Kyle Keith, giving his teammate Justin Erb some spotlight at the front. And Erb looking for his 3rd top 10, most importantly, his first win in his Droppin the Hammah Cup Series career. As he'll run in the race lead, that middle lane working successfully for him. It's 2 car lengths between 1st and 2nd, pair of car lengths between 2nd and 3rd, and another going all the way down to 5th place in Jaden Porter, who runs in the inskirts of the top 5. Jesse Whittington tracking him down in the run for 5th place. And really, at this point, Francisco, no one has gotten away from each other in the middle of the top group. We saw a bit of that distance from 1st, 2nd, and 3rd onwards to the field in that first run. And now early days in this second long green flag stretch. And nobody in the top, maybe 7 or 8 drivers, have squeezed away. Top 10 only separated by 2.1 seconds on the racetrack.
It's very interesting that that's what's going on here. It's kind of the pattern we've seen at this in the first run as well. We saw most of the field kind of stay relatively close together. We saw something similar at Kentucky as well. Once you get out of that top 10 though, you got a gap of about 1.3 seconds back to the likes of Cedric Hunter, then another second back to Timothy Stubblefield, and then a second general group of cars that are relatively close to one another. So that's what makes up our 19 runners on the racetrack right now. So I think to really see this top 10 spread out throughout a run, I don't even think it would take the green flag run in of itself. I think we'd have to see green flag pit stops. That's what happened at Kentucky last week, Kenneth. When we did eventually get to those green flag pit stops, it really blew the field wide open as far as the gaps and how close the field had been, generally speaking. It wasn't quite like this. There was maybe a little bit more individual gaps between the cars, but no, it was never really more than a second between most of the field. As Stephen Harlow had a moment off of turn number 2. He's going to lose a spot to Jaden Porter and Jesse Whittington going back to turn 3.
And again, minor margin for error here at Texas in the top 10. You make one hiccup, and here comes the field trying to rattle you out of your cage. And there's Stephen Harlow back on the inside. Jesse Whittington makes the move, clears before they head to turn 1. Left side of your screen, you're watching Cedric Hunter, the Canadian driver who ended up in the championship for last season. Saw his teammate Zachary Hall make a walk-off effort to win his first career drop in the Hammah Cup Series race. Turns out so far to be his only, and it was the most meaningful one for the title. And we watched Cedric Hunter in this race tonight, who dominated Iowa later on in this season, or early in this season, Francisco. He's made several pit stops on pit road, but he's still up in 11th, the driver who hasn't necessarily lost that much on track position, given he's almost pitted every single time we've had a break. How does that happen, and how does that balance come into the equation with somebody who goes down pit road as much as he did today and still have a shot to work well for some solid points?
Well, there's not that many cars on the lead lap to begin with. There was 18 when we went back green. There's still 18 now, so he didn't lose too much as far as the track position is concerned. He's probably trying to get himself into a different fuel window. It's near the 10 lap mark for himself of a difference compared to most of the field. So I'm not sure exactly what the play is, if he's trying to get himself into a different fuel window for...
Whoa, race leader! Justin Erb hard into the outside wall. He'll come careening down the inside barrier. Is there damage for Warren Kyle Keith? I believe there is. And the race lead all of a sudden blows open, and Steven Stepien takes control. What just happened there off turn 2?
And Erb is trying to limp it back to the pits. The left front is torn off that race car, not turning. That's probably going to be the night over for Erb.
Unbelievable. Justin Erb makes a mistake off turn 2, and it's going to cost him a chance at the top spot. He's running comfortably in the race lead, and Francisco, it was just a slip up from the get-go of the second corner, and around he went.
Yeah, we saw him, we went to him and he was loose. And let's see here what the gap is between first and second. He was loose there already. This isn't close enough for Aeropack, but he just gets loose and slams the wall. Keith has nowhere to go. Stepien, the C's open for him immediately, and Keith drops all those positions at the same time, but definitely Erb getting the worst of that. And it goes back to what I talked about earlier, Kenneth, that the turn 2 with these cars, with this setup, it is just incredibly loose for some reason compared to anywhere else on the racetrack. He didn't even have the assistance of aero packing there. Keith wasn't close enough for that to play a role. He was loose before the 24 ever even got there. Unfortunately for Keith, he also had to kind of check up and avoid getting some big damage as well. He drops back to 5th, but look what it does. It puts the 88, Steven Stepien back out front, and Jaden Porter up to 2nd.
Race high for Jaden Porter. Jesse Whittington goes up in a 3rd. Stephen Harlow cracking back in the top 5. Here comes Easley, run up high off turn 4 and Warren Kyle Keith. And there's that right front damage. We don't necessarily see it be that big of a factor, but when we saw what happened to Sammy Harrell, and even a bit on what happened with Jason Anderson, that is going to bleed him a lot of time. He washes up in 2. He's going to carry Easley with him at the exit of the corner. Here comes Perosini and Brendan Banks in the top group.
And that's getting really good here. I think maybe a little bit of damage to that 24, plus being in this dirty air that he hasn't really been this evening, is really starting to play roles. He nearly puts Perosini into the outside wall. You see the damage on the right front of his 24 machine. Now here comes Cedric Hunter, who he puts the block on into turn 1.
Shutting the door in 1. Doesn't want to bleed any more track position, and the Canadian can now try to hunt. As Brandon Banks settles back, he watches his fellow foe in the top 2 in the point standings running away with the track position advantage. 16 to go until halfway. This race has become a wide open chase in the wild, wild west, with Steven Stepien out in front, and the first time he'll lead some laps after a bit of time away.
You know, Kenneth, I was going to make a little bit of a joke when we were talking about Cedric Hunter, but I don't have that kind of thing to segue into this now, so I'll just bring it up right. What a start it's been for the Miami Marlins this year. Owen Casey hit a 2-run home run at the bottom of the 9th to send them to victory over the Rockies. They're 3-0 for the first time in 17 years.
That's great for them, a team that has been struggling for so many years since the glory days of their second World Series title back in 03. They moved those banners to right field. They had changed it from the left side of the foul line to the right foul line, and a great start for the Miami Marlins in the baseball world. That season just kicking off just not that long ago, opening day Well, just this past weekend, Steven Stepien, driver from Massachusetts. Not sure if he's a Boston Red Sox fan by any means, any stretch of the imagination. I don't know his baseball affiliation, but right now knocking it out of the park after taking advantage of the near caution that happened right in front of him between Justin Erb and Warren Kyle Keith. It almost seems to be a rewind of Las Vegas quite a bit, with Stepien up in front, and then the eventual dominator of that Las Vegas race, Jaden Porter, just sneakily running a few car lengths behind him.
Well, I don't know if he's a Red Sox fan, Kenneth. We might have to ask him about that, but one thing's for sure is he's going to try to play his inner role as Chapman and be an excellent closer here tonight.
Gonna try. Jaden Porter looking for his third career Droppin the Hammah Cup Series win, and would put himself pretty high already on the all-time wins list for Droppin the Hammah Cup Series competition. Again, we only have a short sample size. Of course, it's the first full season, and then now what's going to be the 6th race of this second season. Plenty will argue that Sunoco Cup Series history is very much indulged in what's going on right now. I mean, this is mostly the same group of guys. There are a few rookie drivers here and there, but you look at overall what this field looks like, plenty of them. The DNA from the early years of that MPI Cup Series, Sunoco Cup Series days back in 2020, leading to all the way up to 2023, 2024. But if you want to just count the first season of DTH plus this one, well, in the short history so far, Jaden Porter will put himself kind of close to Lawson Peel, who put himself on the top of the totem pole with all of those wins last season that ultimately didn't turn out a championship, but still, for the Columbus, Mississippi native, another etch in the name of history. And even in Sunoco Cup grand history side of things, Lawson Peel still the ultimate dominator, but Jaden Porter starting to put his name in this early season run. There's Stephen Harlow running in 4th. Garrett Walden, a race-high top 5. Haven't talked too much about this Walmart Chevrolet, a driver who kind of got a visual nod in the iRacing development blog video. They post that every single build update after they release a development blog, talking about their newest updates, what they're working on, what they're releasing on the sim, and just being transparent with all of the customers on the iRacing service. And Garrett Walden just got a little cameo there in a super speedway shot with the NASCAR Cup Series cars. You could just faintly on the left side see the number 43, those Walmart colors, and all of the DTH drivers saw that video and said, hey, we know that driver very well. That's Garrett Walden, and after starting back in 11th, a progression of 6 since the drop of the green.
The Walmart colors putting into some good use in that number 43, and I think this is a tidbit that I may remember, Kenneth, and I gotta ask you because I'm not too sure myself. Did you ever own NASCAR 09?
I did. That was an all-time classic game. I had all of those games up until, I want to say, NASCAR 14. That was my last one for a few years.
So, if that's the case with you owning 09, do you remember the car, the Walmart car that you had to enter the code for?
Oh, I do. Yeah, I do remember that. Do you remember the Walmart track?
Yes, I do as well. And you could, which kind of inspired the future Chicago Street Course, the Chicago Pier Course that you also entered the code for.
Yeah, well, you think of what NASCAR is like right now, what they've done. They're going to be racing in an Air Force base in a few months in June in San Diego. I mean, if you were a NASCAR fan back when NASCAR 09 was out, I think the last thing you'd ever think NASCAR would ever do is run on a street course that kind of looks like the Walmart Raceway. Do you remember the Old Spice track as well? There used to be an Old Spice road course back in, I'm not sure if it was back in NASCAR 09, but it used to be back in NASCAR 06. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
Yeah, I have a vague memory of it somewhere existing. These old, like, EA NASCAR tidbits of NASCAR games were definitely at their peak with the fan enjoyment and all these little fun moments were in there in the NASCAR 06, which I believe was the total team control game as well. The one where you can change between the different drivers on an organization. That was a fun aspect to that game. As Matthew Perricini with the big slide off of turn 4, and he saves it.
He saves it right in front of Brandon Banks. That's the points leader, and still going around. Can he hold on? And he does. What a save from Perricini.
Yeah, it was in the grass, so iRacing didn't deem it a yellow flag.
He's going to lose all that track position and potentially call it quits 5 laps from halfway. But what a drive from Perricini just to keep those 4 tires off the inside or outside wall. Here's a look on the right side.
Yeah, it was clipped a little bit of that apron and got loose. That's kind of what we saw a little bit earlier. has a great job here, but right there clips the grass on the restart zone, and that's really what sends him into this slide. Now he's got grass on the tires, overcorrects it and spins it, but luckily for him and everybody else, he spun it left off the racetrack. No yellow flag.
So Parasini stays under and stays out of trouble. He'll fall a lap down potentially here, back in 16th on what is now 17 cars that are still on the racetrack. 18th through 23rd have decided to call it quits. Jesse Whittington, another big scare, this time off of turn 4, keeps it straight without a spill involved. But these cars are right at the edge of control here at Texas. Whittington now saving the car again. Kip easily on the bottom this time for 5th.
Yeah, these cars are becoming a handful for everybody up and down the running order. You're seeing this battle going on between Whittington and Easley. And you look a little bit further up ahead, Walden now closing in the gap for a possible spot in the top 3. So it's getting really interesting how these drivers are trying to manage their tires, manage the gaps. And I will say, interestingly, Jaden Porter's still matching times with your race leader as the kind of top 3 or 4 have pulled away. Now easily to the bottom of Whittington for 5th.
Great pass on the inside of turn 2. We saw Walden get to the inside of Jesse Whittington as well. Few moments before that slide happened at the exit of turn 4. So a fantastic job for Walden to escape the near misses there in the top 10. And we'll stay green with 2 laps to go until the official halfway mark here from Fort Worth, Texas. We are getting word from the YouTube chat that Steven Stepien is indeed a very big Boston Red Sox fan. So it's a favorite player, Manny Ramirez. So,
wow.
Big-time Red Sox fan, Steven Stepien. You know, I got a chance to see Fenway Park a few years ago in 2021. It is a gorgeous stadium. I mean, it's just full of rich history from one of the oldest teams in the MLB. And for Boston itself to have such a rich culture in baseball, you know, that famous rivalry with the New York Yankees, a team that our good friend Keelan Belshaw is a fan of on the baseball side of things. So I'm sure him and Stepien will have a lovely conversation about the ongoings of baseball between those two franchises. But a beautiful Fenway Park full of so much old memorabilia from the Red Sox glory days, and even still the great things they continue to do in the modern age. And to get to see the green monster, that big old wall in left field, that was really cool as well in the outfield.
How big was it? Did it look as big as it does on TV?
It is monumental. That thing is large. It may be even bigger than how it looks on TV. Just with the statue of it, I mean, it's just a big wall. It's just big all around, and you get to sit there. There are a couple of seats that are right on the edge of that wall, and you just get a grand scope of literally every single home run that has been stolen by the fact that the wall just exists. No outfielder can stop anything better than just the wall can itself. I mean, it's fantastic.
It's definitely one of those ballparks I would love to visit at some point, Kenneth. It's got the history. It has the ties to NASCAR as well, of course, Roush Fenway. But I also think that we'll have an excellent time when we do eventually get around to possibly going to Wrigley Field in a few months when we go over to Chicagoland Speedway to catch the NASCAR Cup Series action. Watch also the Chicago Cubs and their exciting and also just as historic stadium.
Yeah, and obviously Yankee Stadium, you can add that to the list of very historic ballparks. I mean, a handful of them that have been around for hundreds of years in baseball history. As we watch this battle for what is 9th and 8th on the racetrack right now. Chuck Stevens back in 10th. Van Schaik looking for his 4th straight top 10 effort here in Season 2 of the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series. As he rides on the outside, letting Stevens by, threading the needle there in 1 and 2. Skipping away on the outside, getting around Van Schaik, peeking up on Keith. And these drivers, by the way, just about 5 seconds off of Cedric Hunter, who runs in 7th. And a potential winning strategy for him in the cards as we're now halfway.
And the battle for 5th is heating up as well. Kip Easley's closed the gap up to Garrett Walden, trying to put the pressure on him to move up into 4th. Brandon Banks is not too far off of this battle as well. He's about half a second behind his teammate in the 8th. So this could be shaping up for a possible 3-way fight to see who gets the spot into the top 10. And critically as well, Kenneth, these leaders, they're approximately about 10 or so laps from being able to make pit stops. I don't know the exact number as far as the fuel window. You also got to remember they ran a few caution laps in there. So it's very possible that 10 to 15 is probably the real extreme edge of the window that these guys could probably run to. Toss in almost another 10 laps for Cedric Hunter, who's been coming in and topping off on fuel. And he might get himself into a window to maybe stretch it. It'd be a very big ask to go 70 laps on a tank of fuel, as Kip Easley made the inside move, tried to see if the 43 retaliates back to the bottom. But it's going to be troublesome, but he almost loses the front of his race car. Now here comes Banks.
And look at Garrett Walden not even breaking his sweat there off of turn 4. He is just chill as a cucumber right now running in the field. He's in these hard time battles between himself and 2 DBR Chevrolets in Kip Easley and Brandon Banks. And just as chill as you could ever find somebody behind the wheel. And Walden falls back a few spots, still in the top 10 territory. And the good news is a lot of wiggle room between Cedric Hunter and Warren Kyle Keefe. As we mentioned just a few laps ago, now Charles Stevens occupies that spot in 8th. That gap remains at about 5.4 seconds. So easily a lot of time now between the early portions of this top 10 and then those 3 or so stragglers that are in the back half of the top 10 group as it runs.
And you see, Kenneth, he's not in that room by himself either. From experience, I don't think it's a good idea for other people to be in the room with me. I've been told I can be very loud when I talk, even now, by the people in my house. Notably, for those of you who may not know, I'm in my living room, so I'm in the middle of an open house with everybody being able to listen to everything I say. So if you ever hear me kind of talking low, maybe not putting in maximum effort on my voice, that's why. So for other drivers, I'm sure that they kind of go through something similar, and in this case, looks like Walden is as well tonight.
A very chill vibes from Garrett Walden. Jaden Porter sideways off turn 2, and underneath Stephen Harlow lay up inside move in turn 3. So Droppin the Hammah will get 2 of their cars 1-2 on the racetrack with 92 laps to go. And as we aforementioned, pit stops could be on the horizon. Wasn't a threat there in that first run with the early yellow from Richard Swavely, but now that the cars are on the edge of control, now that they've gone too deep into this run, everybody at the front now reaching their 60th lap on the racetrack without any interruptions in the middle of the group. Stepping the race leader, Harlow back in 2nd, Jaden Porter running 3rd, Kip Easley, Brandon Banks, the 2 Drinkin' Bros Racing teammates, now up to race high 4th and race high 5th. The points leader has easily made a recovery here in this second half, or this first half rather, entering into the second half. After spending a majority of this race, straggled in the top 15, Cedric Hunter back in 6th, Walden back in 7th place, Chuck Stevens, Charles Van Schaik, and Kevin Roy started dead last and 23rd in this race. What a drive for Kevin Roy up into the top 10 for the first time. So at least one pit stop will occur, given that there are no yellows, and you think, how are we going this long when we've seen other races on the Cable and Racing Network with next-gen cars at mile and a half where they go 45 to 50 laps? Well, in this league, they go 100% fuel. So apart from many leagues that run 75%, that gives you that fuel window of about 45 to 50 laps on a single tank. You can go a bit longer here with 100% fuel on the car. So although the tires are experiencing the same amount of wear, the same amount of toughness that they have to outlast the amount of laps to run, the fuel can run you really long over the course of the run. So that's why we're watching these drivers just lay it all out there on the line, and kind of what they had to do at Iowa, part of what made Cedric Hunter's run at Iowa just so special to keep the tires underneath him. Now it's the same challenge, plus a bit of extra detours that Hunter can take with all those extra pit stops he's taken tonight.
He's absolutely flying right now as well. He's been putting in some really good lap times, got up to Brandon Banks, trying to see if he can get past for that position as well, and he's going to be able to afford to go longer, and that's going to be crucial. When we do see the field pit, at that point we could probably add 10 laps. That's the difference between what Hunter can do. So we're going to keep an eye on this field. We know Warren Kyle Keefe has already made a trip down pit lane, but he also had that damage to his car that he probably was looking to try and get repaired to any amount before he went back out on the racetrack. And with 88 laps to go, even if we went and stretched it as much as possible to the end of your fuel window, it's going to be tight for the 45 to make it on one more stop. But I don't think that's his play. I don't think he'll pit early to avoid being trapped by a yellow flag, but I certainly think that it's going to put him on a different strategy compared to everybody. I think everybody is going to pit here whenever they do, take the 4 tires and fuel, and I think whenever they pit again, it's going to be 4 tires and fuels again. I don't think it'll be that straightforward for the 45.
So he's got the option to slap on 2. We've seen how much time that could save over the course of the run. Kip easily decides it's his time. Brandon Banks will follow.
So this comes now with 87 laps to go. Kenneth, I sorry I cut you off, but now we have pit stops.
And those 2 cars in, of course, working 86 to go here at Texas. So a possibility that they can kind of hold out on this undercut, hoping that for Stepien, Harlow, Porter, Hunter, the rest of this top 5 Whether they wait out just a few laps longer or whether it's going to be this time by that they come in on pit road, it's hopefully going to work for them. Those fresh tires, they can get much sooner. Now Jaden Porter comes in off of turn number 4. No mistakes. Bit of smoke there from the back end of the 82, but he's in as well.
And another thing that iRacing did when they refreshed a lot of these oval tracks, Kenneth, is that they moved the line for pit road and pit road speed. You used to be able to go almost a good bit down pit road before the actual pit cone was for it to mark your speed. They moved that up at a lot of racetracks, so now you have to get a lot more of your braking done in the corner, and for some drivers that may be a little bit more costly. In this case, Porter, nicely done, gets in and out of his stall, and now he's going to have to watch his blend compared to those drivers that already made a pit stop, like a Brandon Banks, like the 8 of Kip Easley. And we'll see the merge between those guys here as Porter starts getting up to speed. Looks like he will remain ahead of Banks. The gap is about 2 or so seconds. So even by pitting a lap after those guys, he's not going to lose those positions. So we'll see how long does it take for your leaders and everybody else to kind of cycle in and try to make these pit stops. They're still going, so maybe some life as far as what they're able to kind of get themselves into a future window in.
Well, it might be possible, but for Harlow, we know he's catching up to Steven Stempy, and there's Cedric Hunter on the right side of your screen. He is 11 laps better than everyone else. Last time he came down pit road 57 laps ago. Everyone else crossing the line here for lap number 69 on their stick. So they come across the start-finish line. Still no signs of any one of the front runners coming in on pit road, so it'll take them a little longer, and that means every single waving moment, Brandon Banks and Kip Easley and Jaden Porter are wondering, well, hey, what do we do? Now they're a lap down with 7 cars on the lead lap, and they're just waiting eagerly for anyone at the front to make this their calling card. Harlow has been trailing down the race leader little by little, faster lap times than Steven Stempy, and that time just a hair slower, but this time back in favor of the number 6, so we could easily have a battle for the top spot entering back off of turn number 3. But it's just a matter to see, of course, when they come in and how long exactly can Hunter stay out on this old set of tires.
It's going to be interesting to see. Stempian and Harlow, they've crossed already for 70 laps on their stint, and they're going to go at least another lap. So I don't know, Kenneth. I think depending how many laps they're able to continue going around the racetrack, Garrett Walden will bring it down the pit lane. And to be honest with you, I think the likes of Banks and Porter and them, they probably pitted earlier to try and get the undercut on these guys. Maybe not thinking too much about the idea of getting to the end on fuel. That's because I don't think Stempian and Harlow can get to the checkered flag on fuel. But if this goes green, if all I'm seeing is a good indication of what they can do, it looks like Harlow will pit now on this lap. Stempian will go on to a 72nd lap. Probably will be in this time as well. If Cedric Hunter is able to go at least another 10 laps, he'd have to run the exact same number of laps to go to the checker flag without ever pitting again.
And you saw that shot from Steven Stempy, and look at him reach forward. That's his keyboard that he's reaching forward to, and there's a command that you can have, and you can bind it to a button on the keyboard that says pitting in or pitting out. So he is making this call, just reaffirming to the field he is entering pit road. Track is clear, no worries about traffic behind him, and the race leader is in with 78 laps to go at the stripe. That means race lead turned over. Cedric Hunter has a chance to outlast, but just how long can he stay out?
Yeah, the big question is how many laps can he actually go, because everybody else was able to save fuel as Jaden Porter now took the jump on Steven Harlow. So when this all comes out of pit road, it could be Jaden Porter out in front from Brandon Banks and Kip Easley, as there's Harlow a little bit further back. It's jumped by even Richard Swavely. I don't think has been down pit lane so far, but there's Garrett Walding slowly closing in the gap on Harlow in the process. There's the 88 now exits pit road, and here's going to be the merge. It's not really going to be a big contest. There's the speed line. There goes Porter blasting by the 88. And what that means is now Cedric Hunter and Charles Van Schaik, for that matter, 2 drivers that are 6 or 7 seconds apart on the racetrack at this point. How many more laps can they go around this racetrack? It's 76 laps to go at the line. If Cedric Hunter somehow is able to do those 7 more laps, it's a possibility that he can get to the checker flag without having to bring it down pit road, but he'll have to save. The good thing he has going for him, he has just over a lap to Jaden Porter, so he has plenty of room to save the field where he has to.
And Charles Van Schaik is the only other car on the lead lap, but he's a mere 6.1 seconds beyond the race leader on the right side of your screen. So there is a lot of elbow room, there's a lot of space that Cedric Hunter can work with. Charles Van Schaik is just coming around to turn 3 as Cedric Hunter weaves off of turn number 4, gets around the lap car of Daniel Holdcroft, and now only 2 cars with 75 laps to go on the lead lap. A chance for Cedric Hunter to spoil the party after hanging in the background for a majority of this show. Chance to break into the spotlight for the second time this season and make it his 3rd career dropping the Hammah Cup Series dub. While Jaden Porter on the undercut alongside Brandon Banks and Kip Easley try to hang tough against Steven Stepien, but that 1 lap of tire difference is not going to work in the favor of Easley. Underneath Van Schaik goes Steven Stepien. Underneath Kip Easley goes Stepien as well, and he's into what's going to be net P3 on the racetrack.
That's about 8 lap better tires that Stepien has compared to the likes of Easley, Banks, and Porter, so he will close the gap, especially since we saw him be one of those faster cars towards the second half of that run. We'll see if Porter's able to put up a fight, but you see how quickly Stepien rolls up to the back of Banks for that matter. So this could be possibly a non-contest for Net's second, as Harlow will try himself as well to close up what is a 3-second gap to Kip Easley. And there now goes Stepien peeking to the bottom. We'll see if it takes the inside. And no, Banks now goes to the bottom. Kind of hurts the 88 for a bit of a moment. But look, he has the grip to just turn left, go to the inside of Banks, and get the momentum off the corner as well. He'll easily clear for the active 4th place position and take that spot. Now he has 1 second to be able to catch up to your race leader. With the completion of this lap, that's now 68 laps that the 45 has gone on this stint. Same thing with Van Schaik, who continues to go around the racetrack. It's getting close, Kenneth. You're seeing 72 to go, 68 laps on your stint. It's almost there.
Could be the magic number, 68. For the 45 of Cedric Hunter, he stays on the racetrack with hope. There's Steven Stepien cutting his teeth through the field. Last time by, only 0.2 faster than Jaden Porter, but that was because he was getting around Brandon Banks in traffic at his prime. When he's all by himself, he's more than half a second faster. And Stepien searching for net P1. Charles Van Schaik, 5.5 seconds off the board of the race leader. He is slowly catching up now that Hunter is in full save mode right now with 71 laps
pitting.
left.
Hunter just announced that he's going to be pitting in on this lap. That'll be almost 70 laps that he went. He'll take 70 to go at the line, Kenneth. He won't have caution laps to help, so he's going to either have to massively save or hope for something spectacular to happen. But crucially, Van Schaik is able to go another lap.
And he's on lap 70, so Hunter pits a lap earlier than Charles Van Schaik does. Feels he has enough to outlast the rest of the field, and hoping that this is more than enough of a buffer to carry his way to the race lead.
Saw the mistake there by the 45, had to kind of back up into his stall a little bit. And Van Schaik will pit on this lap, so he went 70 laps, now he's pitting here, 70 to go. He's going to have to go 69 laps. Can he do it?
It's a look. Cedric Hunter comes out, he loses track position. Charles Van Schaik is up by 16 seconds over the next car, and the best case scenario for him is he's going to have fresh tires, but now he's on pit road. Jaden Porter's coming around off of turn 4, so that gap will slowly shrink down. Stepien is a few car lengths behind Porter. Here's the challenge for the net race lead. Porter and Stepien in the battle for the win.
And we'll see what Porter does as a defense to try and keep this 88 behind. There's probably not much he can do, especially with that tire difference. But he's going to try to see if he can place his car in front of the 88, force Stepien to run somewhere else. In 3 and 4, it's probably going to work out. As you see, he runs right in the trail tracks of the 82 machine. But Porter's sideways. He's had a hard time of keeping that car under him. That's not exactly going to help. But in 1 and 2, Stepien may have some more options.
And Porter running solo dolo this season after having the trifecta of himself, Ethan Fonseca Moreno, Steven Maggio, as a part of that Bacayal Bueno Racing team. And apart from you, Francisco, winning last week in Kentucky, kind of under that BBR banner, Porter's the only full-time driver under that team name. He watches the driver behind him as the league owner and a driver with possibly the biggest set of numbers in terms of teammates out of anyone in this field. All of the experience to Stepien. He's got the fresh tires. Porter still making a name for himself. And oh yeah, by the way, first in points, just a few car lengths back as well, and Brandon Banks running third. So a top three, unsurprising of a mile-and-a-half race. These three known for their longevity in these types of races. And now it's up to Stepien to step up to the podium and make a shot at Porter for the race lead with 66 laps to go.
Yeah, we'll see how the Stepien forms up this pass. We saw Porter hangs on nicely in 3 and 4 as far as his ability to defend from Stepien. You see Stepien kind of arc his way down into 1 and 2, try to get that rotation. You see how sideways Porter gets in turn 2, especially just the back end not cooperating. But for now, it's working. He just is able to place his car in the right enough spot, and it keeps Stepien from closing the gap. But you see Stepien able to put that left into some clean air, might help that rotation.
He is inching closer. And Porter now has to think defense, defense, defense. He runs middle. Stepien also runs low and flails from the crossover. Brandon Banks, by the way, is nearly a full 10th faster, so he is slowly catching up to the top running 2 with a lap car in front.
You saw the moment that Porter had off of turn 2 again, just got really loose. That allowed Stepien to close up. Now it's happening again in turn 4. He's drifting up the racetrack. Stepien has some momentum. What does he do with it?
He's within a car length to turn 1. Porter selects high. Stepien chooses low. The left lane's going to work in turn 2. Stepien points his nose to the inside. A chance to plant and fire in 3 and 4 for the lead. And
nice,
Porter shuts the door again.
Yeah, he tried to get there, but he got loose on the bottom, trying to put the power down, very similar to Porter. So now he has to get back and try to recharge this one again.
And what other options are left? If you are Steven Stepien, you watch Brandon Banks, half a second behind the front running 2. Chance for him to spoil the party. If these two don't get quite along well with each other, Stepien gains ground again. He peaks in turn 3. He's got the nose underneath.
This might be
Porter
his chance.
playing the pinch on the exit of turn 4, runs wide. Here comes Stepien to the inside for the race lead.
They're side by side for the spot. We'll see if Porter tries to hang it on his door here in 1 and 2. There's just not much that he appears to do. He runs way up the racetrack, but not enough. Stepien back out front.
What a patient drive from Steven Stepien, and the reaction just cold, ice cold for Steven Stepien. Had the hand up just to wipe the sweat off the brow, and Stepien back in control, coming to 61 left from Fort Worth, Texas. Brandon Banks still one of the faster cars in the top 5 at a 30.496. But Stepien in the clean air, Francisco, 30.460. This is his time to run away.
And now this is going to be a really good battle for second on the racetrack between these two. We've put on some good battles so far this season. And we'll see. This is essentially the points lead battle. Just when one thinks up, they'll get the upper leg on the other one. They find themselves up into the top 3. It's going to be difficult to gain or lose ground on one another if they're constantly nose to tail out on the racetrack. It's going to come down to mistakes. In this instance, Porter's just been really sideways, especially on the long runs here. You see him once again get big time sideways. Now Banks is going to have a run to the inside for the position.
And these are, again, like we talked about, the top 2 in the championship. 6 points between Banks at the top of the board versus Jaden Porter, who's been playing catch-up. These are the only 2 drivers in this Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season to have finished every single race in the top 10. So it's consistency across the board in a newly revamped chase system that now rewards consistency over flat-out winning. And it's the 2 drivers who have been the best so far this season, continuing to hold the torch here at Texas, and now running 2nd and 3rd. So this gap, as tight as it's been going into the race, may just be even tighter coming off. Maybe the same coming out of Texas going into Auto Club next week. But Banks has the opportunity to sail off into the sunset, potentially chase down the race leader. He is a bit faster than Stepien this time by, and it's 7/10 that separate those 2 drivers at the head of this field. And by the way, although Jaden Porter's on 1 lap better tires, of course you see what's going on right now between those two at the front of this field. Kip Easley is also a few tenths back with a chance to gain some track position. So plenty of time for Kip Easley to make a move, and probably one of the best drives we've seen Easley have, the Missouri native, all season long.
Yeah, he's been quietly putting in a good effort here tonight. Qualified pretty decently in the top 10 as well. And he loves the super speedways. That's the tracks he definitely feels he could take advantage of. But don't forget that one run he had is, he gets a little bit of air onto the rear spoiler of Jaden Porter. And that's been a free fall for the 82 on this run. He's just been losing time and losing positions. Now he drops to 4th. And within 2 seconds behind him is Stephen Harlow, who pitted just about 7 or 8 laps after the 82. And if you're Jaden Porter, at what point do you consider taking that 2-stop? You know you're going to have to stop again. But what lap do you do it on if you want to try to split the run and take advantage of the tires before the wear on them does damage to your run?
Just a big question mark, and almost feels like Iowa all over again. Are we going to find ourselves in the same situation? Who's to say? We'll figure out in about 56 laps time. Steven Stepien, the current race leader, as we swing it west here from Fort Worth, Texas. You're watching coverage of the 6th race in the 2026 Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series from Texas Motor Speedway. We'll be right back on the Cable Winner Racing Network.
Racing isn't easy, but experiencing it is. iRacing puts you in the driver's seat with the industry's leading sim racing game. Drive on laser scan replicas of the greatest racing circuits from around the world. Go head-to-head against other drivers chosen by skill-based matchmaking to ensure competitive racing at every level. Compete across all your favorite series. In officially licensed cars, engineered to deliver the most accurate driving experience possible. Join a race or host your own with players from across the globe. Race against the computer or in a league with friends. Feel the thrill behind the wheel. Visit iRacing.com.
These Pop-Tarts are tasty.
Maybe Pop-Tarts do belong on the tailgate table.
Pop-Tarts, a lineup you can eat. There's only one fuel that can drive the performance you demand from your car. New 94 Octane, the highest octane on the market. Only at Sunoco.
And back live from the virtual Texas Motor Speedway, continuing coverage of Race 6 in the 2026 Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series season right here on the Cable Winner Racing Network, working through 50 laps to go. And this is the man out in control in smooth and clean air. Steven Stepien, who has led a good portion of this race, took back the race lead over Jaden Porter. Brandon Banks got around for the runner-up spot. Kip Easley has also settled through to 3rd. Porter has now fallen back to 5th. And Stepien en route to what could be his 3rd career, Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series win. Won at Gateway in Season 1, also won at Echo Park a few weeks back here in this very 2026 campaign. Well, alongside Francisco Bacalhau, it's Kenneth Buena with you as we continue our coverage. And this has been a fun one. It's easily turned into a strategy for Francisco. It easily became quick yellow after quick yellow. Richard Swavely went around to bring the end of our first long green flag run. Then we had a follow-up yellow at the end of that. And then right after, Alex Muscarella going hard into the outside wall, bringing us our 3rd and final caution so far of the race. We've had a few close calls in the middle of the strategy, no doubt about that, but overall, it's been about who can hold on to their Goodyear Eagles for the end of this race, and it rings back to Iowa from earlier on this season of who can survive.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting to watch these final 40-some laps, as it looks like James Kunkel is going to bring it down pit lane. He short pitted on that last run. 50 laps on his stint, so he's going to split the final run as much as he can to try and go another 50 laps here to go to the checkered flag on that. tank of fuel, which is the question I was proposing to you, Kenneth, is which of these other drivers maybe try to do the same thing? If they know they're going to stop twice, it makes no sense to go all the way to the end of the race on its own. You're not going to take advantage of the fresh tires by then. But what's the lap that you decide to bring on that extra set of tires and try to gain as much time as possible? With someone like Jaden Porter, who's been dropping time, getting loose off these corners and bleeding time to the race leaders, he's already been passed by Stephen Harlow, and now he's dropped to 5th. He has 6 seconds back to Charles Stevens in the 84 machine, which is right there in front of Cedric Hunter. At what point does Jaden Porter decide, as he's now 38 laps on his stint, to bring it down pit road? It's going to be soon if he does so.
It almost looks like you'd think maybe 40 laps to go, 35. You want to be in that sweet spot window where you can use what's good of your Goodyear Eagles, but still not be in the window where at the tail end of it you're going to be bleeding a lot if you push really hard, because that's going to be the goal for the drivers, is push as hard as they can on the tires. And then it harkens back to what we saw at Iowa. Remember when Matthew Perosini and Warren Kyle Keith, what they did to come down pit road? Chuck Stevens gets loose there in 1, going to give up a pair of positions with Hunter and Garrett Walden. Or actually, that's Jesse Whittington back in the 94 giving away positions. He's back in 13th a lap down. Well, we've seen out of them the way that they made use of the meatball flag, which on iRacing means you have to come down pit roads for repairs and you have no other option or else you're going to be DQ'd from the race. We saw what they were able to take advantage of, and after all those drivers started dropping one by one because of the old tires and because of them slowly getting to their breaking point, I mean, they were aggressive enough to get back in the top 10. It wasn't a position where they could go out and win the race, but it was still enough where they can gain some valuable points coming after. So, and maybe I'd say 35 laps to go. Maybe 30. I push it maybe even a little bit closer to cycle around, Francisco, and be on that fresh set of tires. But from your perspective as the driver, because I know I have my own opinion, but I can't really give the perspective of someone who races competitively more in the sim, where would you say is that sweet spot for this car in this track condition?
I think it depends on the track. At Texas, I'm not quite sure because it shows more tire wear than it does on the real life. On the right side, you see Van Schaik clutching into turns 1 and 2, still saving some fuel, trying to make this last run work. Cedric Hunter not shifting down to 4th and 1 and 2 as well. Those two trying to play the fuel game, which is a big part of last week's race. For everybody else, you're going to have to stop. You just cannot get to the checkered flag with the amount of fuel in your car to successfully get to the end. Now, Steven Stempian, because he's leading the race and he has the gap that he does to just about everybody else in the field apart from Brandon Banks, it's going to be really important if he's able to try to wait and see what everybody else does. He doesn't want to be the first one to bring it down pit road. If he can wait and see what the field does, and when he does it, he can maybe wait a lap and then respond. But if it was me, probably now. Pit now.
So pit now. Would you relay that to Jaden Porter? Come in pit road right now and just use whatever he's got?
I'll let Jaden Porter make that decision. But if I was on the racetrack with him, he might follow me down pit road.
Well, then you bring in that concern for Kip Easley and Brandon Banks. And speaking of which, Brandon Banks is on pit road. They have a lap more on their stint than Jaden Porter does.
Sounds like he knew.
So Brandon Banks, I think, just listened to us on the K1 Racing Network and said, all right, well, if you guys say that's the right time, I'm going to take that risk. Brandon Banks, the points leader, is in on pit road with 41 laps to go, and that only indicates that his teammate Kip Easley is going to come in the following lap. We know he's on the same stint, so he ultimately will have to visit pit road. There he is on the brakes. Stephen Harlow getting out of the way, flailing over into second, and the BetMGM Chevrolet makes that quick and easy stop on pit lane. There's the race leader on the right side of your screen in Steven Stempian. He's working lap 38 of his stint. Stephen Harlow on 39. And so now we have the waiting eyes on Jaden Porter. What does he do with 40 laps to go? And is he going to listen to us? I don't know.
Well, let's see what's the case. Stempian will, though. He's or actually, no, he's not. It looked like he was starting to slow down in 3 and 4. We saw him wait on that last long run, and it worked out for him. It didn't take him that many laps to get by the likes of Banks and Porter to get back into the net race lead. But I'm wondering how many laps is he willing to sit out there and give up that time. You're going to see somebody not split this run, Kenneth, purely because they're going to be hoping for a yellow flag. They're going to think a yellow flag could come out, and they want to make sure that they have the track position still to try and take advantage of this race and not just hand it off to the likes of Cedric Hunter and Charles Van Schaik, who will obviously be able to stay out as long as everybody, or longer than everybody else in this race if they continue saving the way that they are. So, I don't know. If it was me, I definitely wouldn't want to just sit there waiting for the caution. Not when you know you can't get to the checkered flag on fuel. I would just try to take advantage of it. Clearly, some people thought it was the right move, and they've made their bed already with that strategy. We'll see how far Steven Stempien thinks it's going to be safe for him to run out there before he has to eventually make the trip down pit road to get past the cars he was already ahead of, which look at Banks having to slice his way through this traffic.
James Kunkel, blue car on the outside. Now the pink car of Cedric Hunter making the defensive move. Well, Brandon Banks is just going to get around without a trace, and now around Chuck Stevens. He'll go in turns 1 and 2. That's that tire difference, how much that means at these mile-and-a-half tracks. And although Texas isn't necessarily considered a tire shredder, it still does wear down the tires considerably on this hotter track temp that we've had tonight. So got to keep in mind when you have a big difference like that in stints, the faster tire is going to be the fastest car by a long margin and by a very whole lot of miles per hour. There's Cedric Hunter on the inside of Chuck Stevens. That is actually for track position. So Hunter weaves his way into 4th as the 84 gives way. The Simrap Market Chevrolet, a driver who in the first 3 races of the season picked up all top 10s, but then ended up missing a few races. Well, actually in all of his races, he has picked up top 10s apart from Kentucky, his most recent start where he finished in 11th, but he's had sporadic starts, hasn't run exactly full time, but has been close enough to reach the minimum starts. And of course, trying to get around that top 12 chase cut line that'll matter at the very end of the regular season. But all of this to say, going to be very sketchy with 35 laps to go. Who can outlast the other? And with Steven Stempien out in front comfortably, will there be a moment of decision for him or anyone else? And will there be a decisive yellow as well? He runs nearly 4 seconds above his fellow friend and teammate Stephen Harlow. Jaden Porter continues to stay out there with hope, back in 3rd. And then we mentioned Hunter 4th, Stevens 5th. Garrett Walden back in 6th place. Van Schaik, who is saving fuel, is in 7th. Kevin Roy from dead last. I mean, this is still going to be a drive in its own right. The 22 car up to 8th. There's Warren Kyle Keith, who is just about to get lapped by the leader in 9th. And Brandon Banks, who is now the first car a lap down in 10th, as he just came down pit lane a few laps ago.
And you got to feel for Warren Kyle Keith how quickly that race turned around. He let his teammate, and there's the caution.
And the caution comes out. So there is the moment to decide. A car spinning on the inside of the racetrack. And it is Daniel Holdcroft. I believe he was coming down pit road. No, he had some trouble coming in.
It was Jaden Porter.
Oh, Jaden Porter with damage. So it wasn't Daniel Holdcroft. It was the man running 3rd.
Right when he tried to come down pit road, Kenneth, the car broke loose and he overcorrected into the outside wall head on. That's going to be raced over for the 82.
And what that means, he is not going to be in contention for the points lead after this race. Brandon Banks will hold on to it. And there he is, just squeezing by.
Oh, my.
The top 2 in the point standings get real close. And here's the onboard from Porter. This is going to get ugly.
Yeah, right. And this probably can happen for multiple reasons. He was getting loose. He actually wasn't coming down pit road. He got loose like he had been for numerous laps. You hear the engine go poof. He'd been getting loose all race long. He had been on that run for nearly 50 laps, Kenneth, and it just, no more. He couldn't handle it anymore, and it goes sideways, it breaks. And this works out for Steven Stempien, Kenneth, because everybody on the lead lap is going to bring it down pit road. He won't lose the track position. And this hurts someone like a Brandon Banks, who was 1 lap down at the time of caution. He'll be the free pass, but now he doesn't reap any of the benefits by trying the strategy he does, and it wipes out any hope that the likes of Cedric Hunter and Van Schaik were hoping to gain out of the strategy. Now they're going to have to go out there and try to pass those 2 in front of them outright.
Well, now it is a all-out duel on what's going to be less than 30 laps to go in this race. Stempien comes in. Harlow, Hunter, Stevens, Walden, the entirety of the field will elect this is their moment to visit pit road for some 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles and a splash of fuel to go along with it, so it eliminates any concern of making it to the checkered flag. Now the concern is, can you be the best car over the long run? Stempien has shown us he can very well be that. Cedric Hunter has been the dark horse throughout the night. Stephen Harlow looks for a better pit stop. This is going to be a close race off of pit road. But Stepien's got the nose ahead, and Stepien wins the fight.
And this is very quickly starting to shape up, similar to how the final run of last season's race went. We were inside of 30 laps to go when we saw that final restart, or one of the final restarts that shaped up the run where Lawson Peel took over the race lead. So we're gonna see how long of a run we get here, Kenneth, and if this ends up forming some different kind of strategy later on.
All right, well, let's talk to the man in front. Steven, you got a copy?
I do.
All right, well, good to talk to you, Steven. Last time we spoke to you, it was with, what do you want to say, 24, 23 laps to go at Echo Park Speedway. You said, quote, I don't want to be in this position with 23 laps to go. You're in the race lead at 1.5 miles with a restart that is going to come very close to that marker under 30 to go. What's the mindset here after this pit stop?
Just try to keep the tires under me and just keep doing what I'm doing. I feel like I've ran a pretty good race. Once I've had the lead, and even early on with the tires, on the first long run, I felt like me and Jesse were doing pretty good. Felt like we were eventually going to be battling for the lead, but just keep doing what I'm doing, and hopefully it works. I don't know. Track changed a little bit. 3 and 4 is running a little bit different than how it did early on in the run, so I think I just got to adjust to that. If I can adjust to 3 and 4, I should be fine. I got 1 and 2 down. I don't think anybody's able to touch me on 1 and 2, but we'll see.
Is this where you go in the mind of Chapman, become the closer here, save this race, capture the win?
I hope so, man. Just close this out. Give me some Enter Sandman real quick or something. I don't know.
All right, well, Steven, had to give a little Red Sox joke in there with you. We were talking baseball a little bit through this race, but Steven, appreciate the time. Best of luck on the restart.
Thanks. Hopefully I'll be talking to you guys in Victory Lane. We'll see.
Looking for his second victory of the season. A few weeks ago to Echo Park Speedway, that's where he captured his first of the 2026 year. He's got his teammate Stephen Harlow on the bottom. Cedric Hunter and Chuck Stevens will line up the second row in 3rd and 4th. Garrett Walden currently in the top 5. Charles Van Schaik on the outside in 6th place. That's row number 3. Behind them, Warren Kyle Keith and Kevin Roy. 2 Ford Mustangs of the same team in 7th and 8th. Brandon Banks and Kip Easley, current top 10 on the racetrack. Only 4 rows of cars, double file through the restart zone. Stepien's got the run, 30 laps to go from Texas.
A good restart for your leader once again, clears back to turn 1. And Stephen Harlow, same deal. Cedric Hunter on the inside has to kind of hold off with being bogged down. That's going to force him to be side by side with Charles Stevens for the 3rd spot. Garrett Walden into the top 5 as everybody almost for the entire field is single file. The dive to the inside as the 84 struggles to put the power down. He's going to lose the spot to the 45. Here comes the 43, and Warren Kyle Keith trying to fight back for a top 5.
And there goes the line. Stevens defenseless in 3 and 4, gives up a pair of positions. Walden on the inside. Keith with a chance to pivot his way back into the top 10. Brandon Banks and Charles Van Schaik figuring out where they're going to be in the middle of the group. Remember, Van Schaik is not necessarily in this group, at least in terms of what's going on in front. He's going to have a chance to fight now in running top 8. Cedric Hunter trails down Stephen Harlow in the fight for 2nd place with 27 to go.
And if he can make this move quickly, it could be huge for him. But we also know Stephen Harlow in his own right has been fast a lot of this evening and even on the long run, so it's not going to be a given to get around this 6th. The question is, how much can he pressure Stepien to try and fight for this race win? You see Hunter has led only those 8 laps, which came when he stayed out to try and make the run as short as possible on that green flag pit stop. We're going to see how this fight goes. It's not going to be easy with these cars with the dirty air navigation that you have to do.
And by the way, only 10 cars sit on the lead lap. Kip Easley is that final machine. He's a 2nd in drift of Kevin Roy, who is 3/10 of drift of Charles Van Schaik. And look at this gap between Easley and that leading car up there. It has become a big difference in the shakeup. And in terms of attrition, a lot of drivers taken out. Jaden Porter, the most recent. Warren Kyle Keith on the inside of Garrett Walden. This is going to be the fight for what's going to be 4th on the racetrack, back to turn 1. And how about the bouncy, rocky race tonight has been, Francisco, for Warren Kyle Keith. I mean, several times we've talked about him being the driver dominant at the front, leading laps, taking aggressive moves, and then for a little while, hit in the background. We didn't think he was going to have a chance to win. Things got a bit dire for him and his few teammates, Justin Erb being involved in the crash, and that's where Warren Kyle Keith found himself in a heap of trouble. Right front damage that he had to periodically fix over the yellows that ensued, and now a chance to seal a top 5 plus some as one of those fastest cars in the short run. What a night it has been for Keith.
And trying to complete the comeback effort is the driver of the 24. Got some of that damage fixed up and taped up, and now he's trying to see if he can mount some kind of a comeback effort. He was one of those fastest cars we saw before he acquired that damage, even faster than the likes of Steven Stempien. So if he can move up a couple more positions, a yellow flag comes out at a point where you might think about some kind of strategy move, that could be a possible way to go for this 24. It looks like Harlow thought about making a move to the inside of Stempien. Stempien covered it off on the bottom, so he remains out in front. It's not going to be an easy final 22 and a half laps here.
Keith looking for his best finish of the season, which was 8th last week at Kentucky. Nothing better than that so far, although several chances gave him a shot to be in chances for the race victory, but he's here now. 22 to go. And here comes Harlow. That's a big dive in turn 1, trying to get his teammate to flinch in 1 and 2. But like Stempien said just a few moments ago, he's got it nailed in 1 and 2. No one can touch him. Well, can anyone have a shot now?
Oh, you see right there, drives in right behind, gets a little bit of that dirty air. But he kind of is able to hang on nicely. Now he's going to have to try and warm up this momentum again for 1 and 2. And 3 and 4, at least early on in the run, you can't really run anything that ain't the bottom. So here we go once again to 1 and 2. Goes a little bit lower. Oh, but right there you see Stempien covers it off. Kind of prevents the 6 from getting any kind of big run off the corner. Now he's going to have to tuck in line and see what he does again in 3 and 4. You see this time now he peaks up a little bit higher. And Warren Kyle Keith has driven up to the back of Cedric Hunter in the process. That could be a battle for 3rd here in a few moments' time, as Stempien's just playing the right kind of defense.
And for Harlow, this is a teammate in front of him. This is someone he holds very dear to his heart in the iRacing community, but someone he knows he can beat, and someone he wants to beat right now. Harlow has never won a Droppin the Hammah Cup Series race, and even if you want to go ahead and pick in the moments of history from the MPI Cup Series, the Sunoco Cup Series, when Harlow joined in the last few seasons of Sunoco Cup action, still 0, a goose egg in race victories. There's Warren Kyle Keith as he gets around Cedric Hunter for 3rd and chasing now on Harlow in 2nd. This is someone who, on countless efforts, has gone hand for hand, bar for bar, band for band with Lawson Peel and Steven Stempien. These two that have been some of the legends in this series over the last few years, and here in the Droppin the Hammah Cup Series. And he's got 18 laps to go to deal his best shot at this 88 car.
And if you remember last season, it was around 17, 16 laps to go in the race when we saw the move made, what would end up being the final lead change of the race with the 3 wide pass involving 2 of these 3. Warren has slipped up into 3rd, and it's going to be up to Stempien not to make a mistake. He's been hanging onto the car. Maybe Harlow hasn't been quite close enough to deal the aero packing. Instead, he's been having to deal with getting that wash of dirty air to the front of his race car. If at any point in these turns he gets close enough, he might have to try and pack some of that air on the rear bumper of the 88, get him sideways to get some forward momentum. Once again, kind of go down to the bottom. But right there, just gets hit with the own wash and does not allow him to close up anymore.
That's the closest he's been to the race leader in any part of this Texas Motor Speedway. It's that entry of 1 and 2. And remember what Stempien told us, he's still got to figure out 3 and 4. He said as long as he can nail 3 and 4, then he'll be the unstoppable driver, and he cannot be passed on the racetrack.
Harlow has a run.
Harlow's got the run off turn 4, used the higher line in the clean air. This time he chases up high.
You see, now he changed his line, Kenneth. Now he's feared. He can't run behind Stempien and expect to get a run. He saw what Warren was able to do. Now he's got a nice run. What does he do with it here in the turn 3?
Will he take the shot? He looks to the inside. He for the race lead. Harlow's underneath. Pivots in turn 3, and Stephen Harlow nails it side by side with Stempien for the top spot. Dooring down the front straightaway. Keith is within range. Harlow's got the nose ahead in turn 1.
It's deja vu. Warren Kyle Keith sees this in front of him, and he's thinking, let me get a piece of this. Stempien gets sideways. He gives up the lead.
And for the first time, Stephen Harlow is going to call himself the race leader from Texas Motor Speedway. And could this be the proper crossover point with Warren Kyle Keith, whether you take a bite out of any of the mistakes these top two hold up in the next 14 laps? And the biggest question is, will there be a response from the fellow Droppin the Hammah teammate?
Warren's been faster than both of these two, but does he have the time to get not just by Stempien, but then get by Harlow as well? Again, I think it's possible. We saw him just how fast of a race car he had earlier in this race. But you see how locked in Stephen Harlow is, leading his first laps of the night. And at the right time, trying to put this one to bed here in the closing stages.
And running smooth in clean air, the first time that Harlow has had a chance to feel that all night long, while Steven Stempien has enjoyed a majority of this time spent at the head of this group. Now he has to worry about the speed that Warren Kyle Keith can possess. And coming to 12 laps to go, Harlow can sense it. He can see the checkered flag in just a moment, but there's still a long way to go. This is going to feel, Francisco, like ages for Stephen Harlow, as here comes Keith from the high side.
Yeah, when you're leading like this and you're trying to get a win, it could feel like forever, especially if you're having to hold someone off or do something. If it's not straightforward, feels like very long. Here's Warren Kyle Keith with the run. He's now to the inside for second.
Not surprising, we'd see him take the high side in 2, now swinging under in 3, and this diving piece of art in turn 3 is going to get Warren Kyle Keith to the runner-up spot. And now the question for him is, can he complete the comeback from near disaster to a race victory for the first time in his DTH career? And that last time by, he was a few bit faster than the race leader, 32.94 for the 24 car. Harlow at a 30.341.
And that's with the pass.
So is there a last gas for Warren Kyle Keith? All to figure this out. 10 laps to go from Texas.
It's going to be tough because now Harlow has a bit of a gap opened up to them. That last lap, Harlow was the one that was quicker. Warren is going to try to get to his lane. Oh, but he gets loose. He has a bit of a moment off of turn 2. It's not going to be enough for Stempien to get there, but that's going to open up the gap to almost half a second.
And could that be the nail in the coffin that Stephen Harlow needs to eject out forward and never look back? Cedric Hunter's joining this fight as well. Third car in line, running in the top 4. That pink Hello Kitty machine with a chance to squeeze into the top 3 and potentially make Stephen Harlow's life a lot easier.
Banks up to the wall.
Warren Kyle Keith is up there. Banks has hit the wall. He's running 6th as Garrett Walden goes by.
Yeah, just went way in there and nearly tapped the outside wall from just how high up the racetrack he went in 1 and 2. He's recovered decently here. He did lose that spot. Now he's down to 6th place. Van Schaik not too far behind for trying to take that position away, but the gap out in front is kind of stabilized at about 0.4 of a second now. Warren probably used up whatever he had to get up to this point. Going to be really difficult for him to find something extra, closed up the gap, and then make a move on Stephen Harlow pending any yellows.
But regardless, this is still going to be a magnificent run for Warren Kyle Keith, a driver who on his last pit stop 23 laps ago when everyone came down pit road, he set a 1:18.0. That's from pit entry to pit exit. In his box, he spent 50.7 of those seconds waiting, repairing this Ford Mustang to get it back on the racetrack, making a surge up to second. And even if he cannot close the deal with the final 6 laps to go, it's still going to be a monumental comeback for Warren Kyle Keith, all things considered. But there is Droppin the Hammah Cup Series history on the line right here. Stephen Harlow with 6 laps to go, trying to become the 6th different winner of the season.
And even if Warren can find something and take this one away, that stat would still remain true. The question is which one of them is the one that becomes lucky number 6 in this instance. But Warren's not done. He had a great run off of turn 2 there. He closed up the gap pretty good. He just can't afford to make too many mistakes Oh, and speaking of, there it is right there. Has to have a checkup off of turn 4. It's going to cost him a lot of time. And Stempion's now going to try to fight him back for second.
And again, the 88 car of Steven Stempion, that black and silver Chevrolet, the leader out in front of Stephen Harlow. They're both teammates, so if any case is the scenario, Steven Stempion can put all the pressure in the world on Warren Kyle Keith and just let that 6 car roll into the distance. It's 4 laps to go. Next time by, Harlow the fastest car, 30.429. And although Stempion was just a hair on his game on a 4.24, he's trailing down Warren Kyle Keith in second. That time by, Harlow officially the fastest car in the top 5. And he's not looking back anymore.
Yeah, Stempion's putting all kind of pressure now on Warren Kyle Keith. And some aero packing as well to try to keep him on his toes. And all that's going to do is allow Harlow to continue to pull away, approaching 3 laps to go. Now that 6 machine is just hoping that there's no cautions in these final 4.5 miles.
Good battles inside the top 5 as well. Bit of a mistake from Garrett Walden. Split middle, 3 wide. Entering turn 1, that's Chuck Stevens taking a shot on the bottom. Charles Van Schaik looking for another top 10. And there could be the yellow. Chuck Stevens goes sideways, but he saves it.
Save.
Unbelievable.
He probably heard, as his spotter said in that moment, wrecking in turn 1, and was already probably thinking, oh man, there it goes. But what a save by the 84. Charles Stevens does a great job of hanging on to that race car. Now the 24 or the 6 takes 2 laps to go, and now the yellow waves.
The yellow comes out, saw a car with their engine exploding. And we will end up in overtime.
That was Matthew Perusini and Richard Swavely involved in a big crash on the front stretch, Kenneth. Oh my.
And this race is not over. There's the reaction from Stephen Harlow. Sees the yellow flag come out. And now he's got to wait just a little longer if he wants to christen in his first ever win. As Richard Swavely celebrating his birthday today. A big happy birthday to Richard Swavely, but this is not the way he wanted his birthday race to go. And it starts with Perusini. Francisco, take us through what happens here.
Yeah, I heard the voice chat of what happened just as I was going to the replay. Swavely says he had a run for the position and got put into the wall. And, well, I think that would be a yes.
Oh, man. A hellacious crash in the quad oval. And remember, we saw that near caution with Chuck Stevens and Garrett Walden entering the first corner. Well, Perusini just took this one up to the sky in turn 4. Nowhere for Richard Swavely to go, bouncing off the wall. And that is a hard place to hit, Francisco. That little bit of a kink in the quad oval, if you hit it at the right amount of direction and speed, that could ricochet you back down the racetrack. And Perusini, after a monstrous save earlier on in tonight's affair, and after Swavely ended up in a similar situation with no damage, now they will be officially out of this race. And here we go. Overtime attempt number 1, and possibly the most important pit stop of the night.
10 cars on the lead lap in this instance, so it doesn't surprise me that most of them pit. Can't make a mistake, but also, what do you take? I have to think you're going to see a 2-tire stop here. The question is, who does so? Looks like Stephen Harlow is going to take 4, and Banks is on his way out.
And so is Cedric Hunter.
Those are 2-tire calls, and Warren Kyle Keith takes 2 as well.
Also a 2-tire call, 9.2 seconds. And Warren Kyle Keith is going to take the race lead, entering the first attempt at OT.
Oh, man, Kenneth, this can get really good. 2 tires, we see how much that works, but this track has also been on the loose side compared to some other racetracks. We see a lot of 2-tire calls in where it's tight. The 2 tires will help you turn. This will give you the track position, but the last thing you're going to want is someone right behind you. Otherwise, you could spin out. So for the top 3, it is a big risk, but it's one they had to take to try and win this race.
And out of those top 3 that elected for 2 tires, the only driver without a race victory this season, you're looking at him. Warren Kyle Keith. Hunter winning at Iowa earlier on this season on a long run. Brandon Banks winning in an overtime shootout at the Virtual World Center of Racing to kick off the campaign at Daytona. Looking to establish a further points gap over Jaden Porter after his crash tonight. And Stephen Harlow, the first driver on 4. He's back on the outside of row 2 in 4th place. So like you said, Francisco, it's more rotation, but at what cost given the slick track surface? How careful do you have to be if you're any one of these top 3? I mean, most importantly, the race leader, but any one of Keith, Hunter, and Brandon Banks. How light-footed do you have to be on the pedal in order to avoid wheel spin and avoid any sum of that over-rotation in 1 and 2 on the first lap?
You just kind of have to be ready for it more than anything. You can't drive it like you have 4 new tires, because that can cause you to spin. So you have to make sure you're careful. You don't want to have someone on your bumper immediately. That could definitely not help your case. And I will say it's interesting that Keith takes the top here. We've seen him take the top when he's restarted in the lead, but from a strategic standpoint, that puts a car on 4 tires directly behind him compared to, say, putting the 45 who has to react to him. And we've seen second place struggle with going, not putting him in front of 4 tires. So I'm not sure if that's the line he wants. If this was me, in this position, I probably would have taken the bottom here, just from running that numbers game right there in terms of who ends up where and what that could mean for me if we get more restarts.
Well, let's find out. First attempt at overtime. If we cannot get to the white flag under green, we'll rack them up and do it all again. If we get the white flag, this race is official no matter what. Overtime here from Texas. Warren Kyle Keith through the restart zone, and it's even from the front row. Cedric Hunter has a nose inside. Keith flails forward in turn 1.
Now you have to be careful with your tires. Make sure that you don't make any contact, you don't slide, and Hunter's going to fight on the bottom. Banks is trying to fight for 3rd place as much as he is. Stempion's trying to hold back. They remain door to door, coming back to the white flag. We'll see if Hunter's able to clear, and he does. Going into turn number 4, they drift just up the racetrack enough, and now with 1 lap to go, what does Warren Kyle Keith have to try and steal this one back from Hunter?
Stephen Harlow back in 3rd in the fight with Brandon Banks. White flag from Texas. It's a send by Keith, and he's going to wash up the speedway in 1 and 2. Will that seal the deal? Spinner off 2. Stepping around the inside wall. And Cedric Hunter is going to spoil the party background all night long, and he's in the spotlight a second time. Off of turn 4, Cedric Hunter, the race winner from Texas.
At the line, due to Banks getting sideways in turn 3, Kevin Roy gets a top 5. What an effort. What a win. And Kenneth, we have our first repeat winner of season number 2.
So we do not get a 6th different winner this season. And the first driver to have 2, it's Cedric Hunter. Won at Iowa earlier on this season and just carries it through overtime on this first and final attempt. And dropping the Hammah victory lane, we'll see this 45 car for the 2nd time in 2026. And for the 3rd time in his Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series career, Cedric Hunter will enjoy the taste of victory. And now his 2nd career win at 1.5 miles.
That just makes me wonder, Kenneth, about the choice that Warren made of choosing the top. You think if he ends up on the bottom of the restart and ends up in the position Hunter was in, does it work out any differently for him? That's probably what's going through his mind right now. And Hunter, what a job to kind of time that restart, get the launch relatively even despite not being the leader, and it puts him in victory lane.
And remember, Cedric earlier on in this race had a chance to take 2 tires, a chance to shave off time on a long green flag run. He had the overcut situation with Charles Van Schaik. It took him a while to cycle back, ended up in the top 10. And on this green flag restart, it's a 2-tire call that ends up paying off for Cedric Hunter as he captures the win tonight from Texas Motor Speedway. Let's get a final look at that overtime restart and how this all unfolded, Francisco, and how the win ended up in Cedric Hunter's hands, and it starts with the restart.
Yeah, and you see almost Warren got clear into turn number 1, but Hunter fought back to just keep the car in their force, the 24 to give him space, and now they're door-to-door down the backstretch, almost making contact. Right here, Hunter's in a good spot to kind of just drive it into turn 3, knowing that he has the track position to do it. He should have the grip. And right there, the 24 just has to lift. Doesn't have the same kind of grip as 4 tires would. Can't really drive it the way he did. And now if you're Cedric Hunter, you're in the control position. At this point, just protect the bottom. Don't let the 24 get to your inside. And you see Warren kind of send it in, gets loose, gets tight at the same time with the dirty air. Ends up losing a bit of ground. Stampian right here gets turned, I believe, by the 84 in the process. Banks gets to the outside of Keith for that spot. They make a little bit of contact. There's Banks getting sideways in front of the 16, forces him up the racetrack. But all the while, that's in the rearview mirror of Cedric Hunter, who has no challenge in the final corner and takes home a 2nd win on the season and 3rd overall.
What a drive by Cedric Hunter on a 9.6 second stop, one of 3 drivers to take 2 tires, staying out on the first and only attempt at overtime. Cedric Hunter is the race winner. 2nd victory of the season, breaks the 5-race different streak of winners. Warren Kyle Keith just a spot short once again. 2nd place, 4/10 back. Stephen Harlow had a chance to win this race leading up until that final yellow flag came out. Was the only driver at the front to take 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles alongside everyone behind him, but he was the leading car on 4 tires, and his finish is good enough for 3rd. Chuck Stevens comes away out of nowhere. The 84 car lines up 4th as they stack up at the exit of the final corner on the white flag lap, and Kevin Roy started this race dead last back in 23rd. He is easily the biggest mover of the night, and he gets paid off with a top 5 at the end of the affair. Brandon Banks back in 6th place will retain the points lead after a crash early in the race by Jaden Porter. His teammate Kip easily rolls back in 7th. Charles Van Schaik picks up his 4th top 10 of the season in 8th. Daniel Holdcroft back in 9th, and Garrett Walden in the 43 racks up the top 10.
11th will go to the number 88 of Steven Stampian. Got into that contact off the turn number 2 on the final lap. Not even a top 10 finish for one of the stronger cars this evening. James Kunkel will finish a lap down in 12th in the number 12 machine. Richard Swavely celebrating the birthday today. Happy birthday to him. Will finish in 13th after being involved in that caution that would bring out the overtime restart. Same with Matthew Perugini, who finishes in 14th. Jaden Porter got loose off of turn 4, head on into the outside wall, finishes in 15th. Jesse Whittington in 16th. Timothy Stubblefield in the 17th spot with Sheldon Hart in 18th. Justin Erb will finish 19th, and Jason Anderson had a tough night, finishes in 20th. Rounding out our 23 card field, Kenneth Alex Muscarella, Ray Rogers, and Sammy Harrell in the number 23. A lot of attrition. Less than half the cars finished tonight's race.
And only 11 of those finished on the lead lap. The driver out in front at the end of it all. It's Cedric Hunter in his 2nd victory of the season and his 3rd dropping the Hammah Cup Series win comes tonight at Texas. Cedric, what a drive it was at the end. Take us through this call to take 2 fresh tires and how it worked for you on that final attempt.
Yeah, I feel like I've lost dozens of races, always taking 4. I was never the guy to take 2, honestly. This is probably my first time ever taking 2 tires on a late race stop, I guess. And it feels really good. I'm kind of sad I haven't done it, years before. But it's stuck. Like I was kind of testing going to the backstretch there, going to the green. I was testing out just first gear, hadn't tried it the whole race, and it felt okay. Like there was probably going to be a little bit of wheel spin, but if I kind of managed it, maybe I could just launch off the line enough to keep it on this quarter panel, and that's kind of what happened. And then I had good old Zachary Hall in the booth tonight spotting for me, and when I came off turn 2 side by side, he was just like, all right, I just want you to just lick the stamp and send it into turn 3, and if it sticks, it sticks. And so that's kind of what I did. I drove it way deeper than I had all night, but the 2 tires are really good, man. So it's stuck, and once we got to the clean air, I knew that we were kind of set. So really good race. We had it kind of won with 40 laps to go, more or less. There's only 2 of us that can actually make it on fuel, and I felt really comfortable with the gap that I had. And then the caution came out, and that was kind of, it took the confidence out of me a little bit, because I knew I wasn't going to be fast enough to hold off whatever, like the few guys that we had in the field that were left that were running up front all night. So, but it came back around full circle, and we got it done. So I'm pretty happy about it.
I want to dive a little more into that opening strategy that ultimately didn't pan out and didn't continue past the halfway mark after the yellows, and of course this attempt at overtime. But the mindset there where you start 12th, you run mid-pack, and you decide to just fill it up with fuel every single lap on the first 3 yellows of the race. What went behind that decision after the first one, and how, again, you try to carry that through the rest of this race, knowing how it ended up being the longest green flag run of the night that we saw.
Yeah, I just figured. I mean, after the first run, I knew I had decent long run pace. Short run pace kind of was mediocre at best, and so like even if I were to get up into the top three, like once you kind of get to the guys that have the clean air, it was gonna get really. If I had even tires with them, it was gonna be really hard to pass them anyway. So I was kind of trying to look into the future, seeing what different strategies we could run. And the coach came out, and one of them, I would say, it was like with 150-ish to go or 140 to go, and I was like, it's like a super long shot, but like, running, if I'm not running in the top five, then I might as well just try something and see if it works. And thankfully, the cautions fell in the perfect spots where I did just top up every time, and gotten to a point where I only had to save a lap or two. I was kind of surprised when that's I guess it was when I won caution there with like 140 to go. Because I mean, we were able to make it almost at 70 laps of fuel that nobody else figured that they were going to top off and make it a one stop. Like the entire field pretty much decided to go with the two, and the tires evened out on pace like really quickly. So I mean, that to me was kind of interesting, but I guess the clean air is really really good, and so I guess guys didn't want to sacrifice that.
Well, Cedric, it's race win number 2 of the season. First one came in almost a similar sense when you think of the long strategy type of things where tires were the biggest concern. You save the most, you end up with the win. And now, given all of this momentum from the second win, how does that help you momentum-wise for not only a chance to run at the top of the chase come end of regular season, but what that mindset is now entering the All-Star break in a few weeks?
Feels good, man. As long as we keep getting these long green flag runs, I always feel confident about possibly pulling off a win. And so far, this season's pretty much just been a tale of that. So confidence is real high if we could keep it up. And obviously having, my good old teammate from last season and series champion Zach Hall up in the on the spotter stand helps a lot, and he's able to kind of give me more information than I would otherwise not get while I'm in the car. So his calls tonight were really good. He kind of was helping me, especially the last 30 laps. Like, all right, this guy's shifting, this guy's not. Maybe enter shallower, stuff like that. Just giving me advice, and it panned out. So shout out to him, man. He's a really good driver, and so he's a great asset to have up in your ear throughout the whole race.
Nothing quite like having someone like that at the top of the boards, trying to give you those tidbits throughout the race. But it's a driver behind the wheel that gets it done. Cedric, congratulations on the win tonight from Texas. Before we let you bounce on the celebrations, anybody you want to thank or shout out for the run?
Yeah, as per usual, man. Shout out to the admins that set this all up, all the fans for tuning in, you guys for putting on a hell of a broadcast every week, and shout out to all the guys that raced me really clean tonight. I had, other than the dirty air, I had no problems with anybody. For another week on top of it. So shout out to the drivers tonight, and again, Zach Hall for being the best spotter a man could ask for.
Some help from the former series champion and a driver searching for his first championship, trying to go for it all later on this season, but a pair of wins early to start. Cedric, congratulations on the win here tonight from Fort Worth, Texas, and ready to see you and the rest of the field take on Auto Club next week.
I appreciate it.
Cedric Hunter wins the Ride the Hammah 300 here from Texas Motor Speedway in that first and only attempt at overtime. We toss over to the second place finisher, that is Warren Kyle Keith with Francisco Bacallao.
Well, Warren, it was an intense race for you all night long. You had a strong run early. You found some trouble in the middle portion, and then you found yourself making the comeback at the end. Talk us through what it was like going through the roller coaster of events.
Yeah, that's a light way to put it. It was honestly a pretty crappy evening. Even though we finished second, I'd rather. It's one of those nights where you feel like you just drove all the way to DC and back. But yeah, it's a good run by us. Best run of the season by far, just speed wise. I don't know. I like Texas, how it runs, how it races. It's P2 for us, I think 2 seasons in a row too. So yeah, good for the Bass Pro Shops of St. Augustine for Mustang. I just tell you right now, that car got super tight. I don't know if it was still residual damage from early in the race, but on that last restart, we just went down to turn 3 and the car I mean, I might as well had 7 reindeer on the front. It plowed so bad, you just wouldn't believe it. So good win to Cedric, but man, what could have been for us? But I'll take a P2 after definitely a Plinko kind of night.
You showed a lot of speed in these early couple of races here, Warren, and we go to Auto Club next week where you also showed some good speed there in last season's event. What do you think is going to be the key for you to try and go out there to the West Coast and try to grab your first win?
It depends what the West Coast plans on weather. That track really races, it's a very sensitive track, so a lot more sensitive than actually Texas is, which is surprising. But we're good at riding the boards, and Auto Club's known to, if you can ride the boards and keep the car clean, you'll have a good day regardless of what the track does. So we'll go out there, just do a little testing maybe during the Easter break. Got a couple tracks coming up, but I have faith in Auto Club. But at the same time, it's going to be very determining on what the LA area decides to throw us with weather. It could be overcast and a bottom feeder race, or it could be sunny and quite warm, and it could really make the racing like tonight at Texas go from line to wall. So we'll see. It's 2 weeks from now. Obviously, we got a nice Easter break ahead of us. Happy Easter to everybody, and we'll see what Southern California has in store.
It'd be a nice time to have that week off and enjoy the Easter holiday with our friends and our families, Warren. And maybe that LA spring will throw a wrench into the weather. I mean, we don't know what it's going to be until we show up. But before we get there, anybody want to give a shout out to the helps makes this happen for the whole 24 team on this second place run tonight?
Yeah, I'd like to thank you guys here at KBRN for broadcasting this week in, week out. Obviously, thanks to Bass Pro Shop St. Augustine for being on the car. It's also nice to have Brant, even though they don't really sponsor with it, but it's, I'm an all guy fan through and through, so it's also nice to have them on board. But thanks to SKM, just week in and week out. We had a little tussle tonight. Hope Justin isn't too upset about it, but we'll do what we need to do. And thanks everybody for watching. It really helps out the league a lot.
Appreciate the time you take with us, Warren, and we appreciate everything you do with the league. Congratulations on a top 3 effort here tonight from the Texas Motor Speedway. Enjoy your Easter, and we'll see you in 2 weeks at Auto Club.
Thank you, guys. We'll see you then.
It's Warren Kyle Keith, second place finish. We mentioned best finish of season 2 after a previous best of 8th place after starting there at the virtual Kentucky Speedway. So as far as that goes, we exit Texas Motor Speedway with an exhale from what a race that was, Francisco, in the final attempt at overtime, the only attempt at extending this race we had. It was a 2-tire call by Cedric Hunter and a blasting restart on the inside of Warren Kyle Keith to pivot on the inside and make the move. What a night from Texas.
Yeah, this race had just about everything, it seemed, Kenneth, with the action out front, with the action in the middle of the pack, the comeback efforts, the dominant runs that looked like they could have happened. So much happened in just one short span of a race. A lot of attrition as well is the other thing to note, Kenneth. We started with 23 drivers in this race this evening, and only 11 were running at the checker, or 12 were running at the checker flag, 11 of which were on the lead lap. So just so much going on in tonight's race. We'll see if it becomes, if it goes back to a lot more drivers running at the checker flag at Auto Club. We saw how that race panned out last season, and it was before the updates that the next gen cars receive, so it was a lot more of a drafty race than we might see this time out. It's going to be 150 laps in the daytime, but like Warren said, we don't know if it's going to be in the sun, in the clouds. We've had our fair share of cloudy Auto Club races with fog, so hopefully it's not that same situation with fog. And then we go to the All-Star weekend, Kenneth. When we do finish up the Auto Club race, we're going to have the All-Star race over at Charlotte. That's going to be fun. And then we have the first Charlotte race, which will be the second Noble 500 race. Those top 5 finishers from Daytona get to battle that out for the cash prize at Charlotte, and whoever finishes top 5 there gets to do it again at Indy.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see what happens there. It's going to be a bit of a whirlwind for those drivers who finished top 5 at Daytona to now figure out how to try and win a bit of a prize in the Noble 5 race at Charlotte. But as we mentioned at Auto Club Speedway, that is our next affair at the 2-mile D-shaped oval in Southern California, a track that lives forever in the sim. And just want to correct myself, we are not racing next Sunday. That is Easter Sunday. So indeed, we will be racing the following week on April 12th. So we will not have coverage next Sunday of the Droppin' the Hammah Cup Series, but that doesn't mean there is a stoppage in action totally on the Cable and Racing Network. Tomorrow night at 8:30 p.m. Eastern, we'll be rounding out the Jerg's Midseason Challenge and figuring out who moves on to the final round at Darlington Raceway from the Michigan International Speedway. Another 2-mile D-shaped oval should give you the high-speed intensity action you've been searching for on your first day of the week. So that comes your way at 8:30 p.m. Eastern on Monday, March 30th. That is tomorrow night. Then on Wednesday, April 1st, no joke, it's going to be a lot of intensity for the final race of the round of 15 in the 4-Wide Racing TJ's Team Series playoffs. So 15 drivers going in, 5 drivers going home, 10 drivers that move on at Talladega Super Speedway. Should be a ton of fun as well. And then Thursday night, the following day on April 2nd, we'll be racing for All-Star Week in the SAC Cup Series at the Nashville Super Speedway and the Music City. You'll probably see our good friend Francisco Bacallao on the racetrack for that as well. And then Sunday, we'll take that off before coming right back to action on the Cable and Racing Network with the next race of the KBRN Truck Series. And of course, when DTH comes in the following Sunday on April 12th, we'll bring you all of that coverage right here on youtube.com/K1 Racing Network. Well, that'll do it from us here at the Texas Motor Speedway after a phenomenal ending. After 204 laps and 1 attempt at overtime, Cedric Hunter captures his 2nd victory of the season and 3rd overall in his SAC or DTH Cup Series career. On behalf of our lovely crew with the DTH Cup Series, Warren Kyle Keith, Steven Stempy, and Chris Progar, the entire crew that makes this series run round, and after all the incredible people at the K1 Racing Network, for Nate Polite, Eli Comerford, Charlie Byer, Keelan Belsha, and my good friend in the booth, Francisco Bacallao, I'm Kenneth Bueno, saying so long from Fort Worth, and a big congratulations to Cedric Hunter on the win from Texas Motor Speedway.